begin with the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any emergency modifications to our agenda?
There are none, but I can go ahead and read out our action taken in the closed session.
That's exactly how we plan to do that. That's perfect. Thanks.
So we did take action in closed session. Thane moved and Shelley seconded the motion to readmit student number 8003693 to Topa Topa Elementary School in the 1819 school year without limitation. And then we had a second action.
The vote was
I'm sorry, thank you. The vote was unanimous, 5-0 to readmit the student. We had a second action. Jane moved and Kevin seconded the motion to continue the suspended expulsion for student number 8004110 through the first trimester of the 1819 school year. Terms of student behavior and attendance contract will remain in effect, and the student is admitted to Miramani Elementary School for this coming fall. That motion was also unanimously approved, 5-0.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And so we move to the minutes.
I have two comments on the minutes. One is on page 9. In the tally of the vote in the first paragraph, Kevin was left out of this vote. Just to add
That's for
that.
June 5th, Kathy.
And then the other comment was with respect to the vote on Summit. I would like the minutes to reflect that some members, especially myself, wanted to establish a timeline for determination.
This is on the minutes of June 6th
Right,
on page 3.
page 3, right.
That's good. That's good.
I meant to send an email and ask you that because I thought the same thing. Yeah.
And with those changes, I would move to.
Can I ask for clarification? Are you saying the motion itself should be changed, or
No, the commentary
commentary should include
should
the
include
request for time?
should include a mention that some members of the board requested a determination of the timeline.
On the permanent situation.
Right,
I think that's to reflect kind of where you were coming from with respect to your vote.
exactly. And I think it was I think it was a significant part of the discussion
Right.
that should be a part of the minutes.
With that change, do we have someone moving
We moved.
to approve? Oh, you did? In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we don't have any student representative report, sadly. Yeah. I know we have a number of public comments, and so far they've all indicated that they want to speak at the time of the discussion of Summit. So is there any other person that'd like to speak publicly right now? And no one coming forward. We go to 6.1, introduction of Greg Grant.
Yeah, Greg, come on up. I am very excited to introduce Greg, although I think David may even be more excited that we have Greg on board now. For those in the audience, our prior bond manager, Ron Tyndall, came on in January of 17, was just tremendously valuable in helping us get our bond program off the ground. Measure J passed in 2014. However, he went out on leave in February, and so we actually had David wearing not just his normal 2 or 3 hats, but a fourth as our acting bond manager in the interim. And so just yesterday, we had Greg come on board with us. Greg comes with 20 years plus experience in school construction, school project management, has just a skill set that we had Shelley as well as Kevin were on the interview panel. We were extremely impressed by not just the technical experience, but I actually included what you had, Greg, in your cover letter, that statement about who you are. You said that this is what I do, but this is also who I am, and the tremendous pride that you take in school construction projects, and knowing the ultimate impact it has on student learning and on the teaching conditions for our staff. I'm just very excited to have you on. So we wanted to give a chance for the board to formally meet you, as well as if you have any introductory comments you'd like to share.
Andy, it's only the second day. I can't offer
He
too
came back.
much
That was
feedback.
good.
No, what I've seen, I'm flattered to be accepted for this position. And I've seen what David has done and accomplished. It hasn't been easy for him. It is a challenging time. The budget is evaporating as we stand here speaking. But we have some ideas, and we think we're going to be able to go in a positive direction, capture some state aid, and have a successful program. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Greg.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg.
So moving on to 7.11.
Sure, Lewis, is a resolution will look very similar to the form of what came to you in April. However, this is a new one for the classified positions that are impacted by the Summit school closure. So just a reminder, each of the Summit staff members had rights to alternative positions. So this is not a statement about the status of their position, or of them as individuals, but rather of their position. So with Summit's closure for this coming school year, we are reducing the staffing in those assignments, and so that's what the resolution here before you is again a elimination of those positions, not necessarily an impact on those employees.
Question, there's no impact on the employees. There are people in these jobs right now, correct? Are they being absorbed elsewhere?
So they have bumping rights into other positions. So there's one position at Summit that we were able to just move into a vacancy. And then these other assignments, the opportunity is for them to choose to exercise bumping rights or to seek one of our vacancies that we have available. And so each of them are making their individual decisions.
So just a question of procedure. If we have an applicable vacancy, we would give someone an opportunity to bump instead?
If we had a vacancy in the classification that matched their hours, then no, but that was not the case. We did not have an opportunity for them to go into a vacancy that matched the number of hours they had. And so if it's just a vacancy by itself, but if it's fewer hours, it'd still be considered a layoff, and so they'd have rights potentially to a position that was equal to or greater than their hours.
Anyone else with questions?
I'll move to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving to 7.12. Are we at 1.2 or we're 7.4? Sorry, 7.41.
I would just like to, before Marilyn gets started, Greg, I would like to let you know that you actually don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Well, it's kind of conspicuous to leave.
That's all the time.
Go do some construction, man.
Ask David what time he received my first email this morning.
We'll see you tomorrow, Greg.
Good night.
Take care. So 7.4.1 through 7.4.4, we'll take them individually, but these are all Maryland's area, and so we'll hand it over to you.
Okay, you all had the draft of the LCAP, and a lot of that draft, I highlighted in yellow, I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, we got it.
Yeah. In yellow, the changes that were made as a result of the public hearing, because I think, and of course, we know that there were also changes done the next day after the public hearing. So I've highlighted those changes in yellow so that you can see and don't have to look through the whole document to find out what was changed or added or revised. So hopefully that will clarify, and I have an interesting side note, and then you can ask questions. Friday, I had project directors meeting at VCOE. I was telling Cheryl this yesterday. And I asked the lead at VCOE who leads the project directors, he also goes to the state project directors meetings, and I asked him about stakeholder engagement, because I know we've talked a lot about stakeholder engagement and how to do a better job of that. And he said it's a statewide problem. It's a countywide problem. The more money that school districts have, concentration dollars, the higher the stakes. So you get more stakeholder involvement. And the districts with fewer concentration dollars or fewer LCFF supplemental, you don't get as many. So it's not just an Ohio Unified problem, but I think it according to Darrington Ramsey, who's the lead project director at VCOE, it's a county problem and a statewide problem. It doesn't mean that we're not going to try to work on it, because I think we can even do better than we have. So I wanted to, that was just a little aside that I just got on Friday. So, but I did want to mention in the document about the fact that the template is just cumbersome. It's not user-friendly, and I want the people that matter to read that and maybe fix it. Because as you know, if you've been on the board since 2014, you know that we've had a different template every year. And this is just one of many changes that we've had over the years since we had LCFF and LCAP. So perhaps they'll change it to make it a little more user-friendly. So, any questions?
Yeah, I guess that when you talk about that, is anyone up there really reading this? So they're making all this work, and it's so hard to read, and it's 100 pages, and how many school districts are there? 3,000 or something,
Over 1,000.
you know?
And ours is small. It doesn't seem small. It's because there's so much redundancy in it. I don't know about the powers that be in Sacramento. I'm bewildered, actually.
I guess I kind of hope that they haven't hired staff to read it all. I mean.
But then why?
So what they end up doing is exactly Sacramento's who creates this template, but they actually are imposing on the county offices to be the ones responsible for the review and oversight of the LCAPs, and so very few are actually making their way to Sacramento. Instead, they haven't given the funding, really. They've thrown a few dollars as tokens, but have given no funding. But that's one of the big things that counties are being asked to take on now, is the responsibility of oversight and review. So Marilyn and Cheryl know very well the folks at VCOE who review these. They are reviewing line by line, and they meet a couple times a year to review it with us. But no, CDE or anyone else in Sacramento won't see it.
No.
I guess my question would be, we spent quite a lot of time the other day talking about it, but are there any things that have jumped out at you recently that we should be particularly aware of?
I think a pervasive theme in this LCAP, and it's something that Cheryl and I have talked a lot about, is professional development and using data and I know it's trite to say use data to drive instruction, but really we need to be using data. Students need feedback, and in order to achieve, they need to know, what did I do wrong and how can I improve? And I think that that's a pervasive theme. I hope that you kind of saw that in some of the verbiage, that we really want to improve in that area and really monitor student achievement. Monitor it carefully, not just, we see the scores in the fall, they take the test in the spring, the summative test in the spring, and then we don't do anything about it. I think it's really important for us as a district to use also formative assessments along the way, so that we can be giving feedback to students, not just this one summative test.
Well, and finding a way, I mean, this is so dry, right? And that's what doesn't work in the classroom, right? So you wonder too, if students are passionate in the classroom, teachers are passionate, and they're doing well, and then they take these tests and they score 40% on them. Well, I mean, I don't want our district to focus on this test if that's not really what's happening in the classroom. And this format doesn't seem to be helping us especially because we do have such different, I noticed at least in the LEAP, each school can sort of have their own focus a little bit.
Highlight.
Your focus might be different. Obviously, your focus is different at Matilaha than it is at the elementary. But this doesn't really give you the opportunity to do that.
No.
Your goals are.
No, and really, it doesn't it's not a vehicle for talking to stakeholders or you, the board, about what we're really doing at the ground level, which is a lot of formative assessment discussions with, for example, we took the 5th grade teachers because 5th grade math was low. And so we took the 5th grade teachers as kind of a pilot team and worked with them with essential standards and then doing formative assessment along the way. This document doesn't allow for those kinds of discussions, which I find those kinds of discussions much more stimulating than this, although, we have to do this. So.
I appreciate the list of the stakeholder engagements. One thing I was wondering was how some of them, like there's a reference to December of, it looks like Miramani, Miners Oaks, Topa Topa, San Antonio PTOs all together.
During the fire.
Okay. So that was like a global meeting?
Yeah, at Miramani. And I also noticed we had a COPA meeting.
Yes.
On December 4th.
Okay. So this is truly for my edification. I just don't know. Like, are there rules under the LCAP for, when, like how you engage a school? I see sometimes like it's the site council, sometimes it's the PTO, sometimes, of course, if they have a PTA, it's the PTA. Is there a rule to it, or is it literally just go out throughout the year and try and engage stakeholders and find out what their preferences are?
The latter.
Okay.
And gather input. So Cheryl and I have talked a little bit again about not only having LCAP on agendas. There's no such word as agenda, actually. Agenda is plural. Its agendum is singular. Anyway, not only to have the LCAP on these different agenda items at School Site Council, PTOs, and so on, Nordoff Parent Association, but also maybe take some critical areas. Cheryl and I talked about it, was it yesterday? Probably Monday. Take some critical areas, maybe in academic achievement, send out a survey to parents, and then also have a meeting about that topic. Then that way, the meeting is more focused, and it might be a way that we could engage stakeholders.
Well, then if only 3 or 4 parents show up, because that has tended to be what happens, at least we have data from a lot of parents to discuss and then use to guide the conversation. So
we can do better. Yeah, I know it's a statewide problem. I know it's a countywide problem, engaging stakeholders, but we can always do better.
I appreciate the looking at that aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say, I go back to the same feeling, which is just I would like, speaking of action, to do something with LCAP that has, I'm so, it's like watching a movie with lots of special effects. At some point you just become, I don't know what to do with 500 pages or however 100 pages of just random.
I try to inject a little enthusiasm.
It's for you. I'm just saying. I want to. I'd like to find a way to make identify discrete things. And say we're going to do this thing and really work at that and get that thing done, as opposed to, this omnibus.
Yeah.
But anyway, we put it on our parking lot, I guess.
Sometimes it's like homework for kids.
Yeah.
You wonder how it's going to help you in the long term, but just doing it is part of the process, I guess.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is I think the legislature thought that when they were imposing LCAP, that they were going to assure this kind of ongoing, relatively intense engagement with stakeholders because, well, shoot, how else will they be able to fill out these forms but for all this engagement? And the truth of the matter is, it feels like, the forums just kind of become an end to themselves, and the engagement part of it, because it's so stultifying, it becomes it's sort of generic as opposed to people get engaged when it's specific. If you say to people, tell me how your kids' math classes could be better, or what issues are you having with math, you probably get some engagement. But when you say, hey, we're going to have this LCAP, we talk about school generally, it's hard to engage them.
Yeah, that's kind of why Cheryl and I thought maybe specific topics. I mean, it could even be a topic. Goal 2 is engagement, student engagement, and so chronic absenteeism is in there. So it could be a topic like that, something like that maybe send out a survey, we get data, and then maybe have a meeting and brainstorm ways to increase attendance.
I think we're working on the next phase. I think the first meetings were titled LCAP and very few people came for the most part. And then Marilyn kind of shifted gears and went out to find the people by going to school site councils and going to PTA meetings and going to whatever she could go to, COPA meetings. And now, we're seeing that the next direction is to have some specific topics. Like we talked about it, having a math meeting, like engage parents with some math questions, send it out to every parent in the district, take all that survey data, still have a meeting so anybody who physically wants to come and be a part of the discussion can be part of the discussion, but we can use the data to have that topic. Because I don't think you're going to really just have conversations about student achievement. I think it's too broad of a topic.
I agree.
And so, but there's no way we're going to cover everything in a year, but we can pick some key focus areas. So that is our next phase, and we were just talking about how to try to do that well.
Sounds good.
We'll see how it goes. But
By the way, lots of there, for anyone at home, where there's a list of engagements. I think overall a little more people have attended this year.
Yeah,
Slightly.
It ebbs and
It's all
flows.
staff.
I mean,
It's all staff.
Well, I was even looking at
a lot of times it is. It's staff who are parents or who I know.
Is anyone with more questions, or should we act on this?
No, I just want to reinforce that idea of specificity. I think you're right. An open-ended conversation, nobody knows what to talk about. But if you can pick some thematic things, to really talk about, I like the idea of having some data to spur conversation. So that sounds really good.
we'll give it a try.
Yep.
Well, I'll move to approve of the LCAP, or to adopt.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now to 7.4.2.
Is that me too?
Put on that,
Federal addendum.
the federal addendum.
Well, when you deal with the federal government, things are a little different. The federal government is requiring that we do certain things in order to align our LCAP with federal statute. With now ESSA, ESS, Every Student Succeeds Act. So the federal addendum, LCAP addendum, is designed to do that, to align the LCAP with federal statute that isn't otherwise in the LCAP. So it's a new document. No one knows how it's going to be submitted. I asked that at project directors meeting. So it is like flying a plane while you're still building it. Like when we used to say that about Common Core math and that, same thing. So I don't know how I'm going to submit it. I just know it has to be approved by the board. And I asked, I even called CDE and I said, now, what is the vehicle? Will it be a portal? Will it be an email with an attachment? Will I just mail it U.S. Post? How will I submit it? Oh, we haven't decided that yet. That was from CDE, so I'm not sure how it will be submitted. I just know it has to be approved by the board.
But they gave you the form.
Yes, it's a template. It's a template. So, questions?
Yeah, my understanding was that this is a requirement that the federal government wants to make sure that the local stakeholders understand that they can insist that the school comply with the Every Student Succeeds Act. But I can't really tell what is in the Every Student Succeeds Act that's particularly different from anything else that we're already looking at and doing.
Yes, we have to comply if we receive federal funds.
Right.
So it's going through those federal funds, like just say Title IIA, which is professional development. We have to comply with those parts of Every Student Succeeds Act. And by offering professional development not only to our own teachers, but to private school teachers as well. So we have 5 private schools in the Valley in 1718 who took advantage. I have to reach out to them. Do you want to use Title IIA funds? And they contact me. If they do, we meet in September, talk about how those Title II funds can be used. So it's those kinds of things. If we get federal funding, it'll also, we have to provide that to our private schools.
Right. And we do.
And we do.
And we show it in this.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you. It's this, Jackie's next copy.
And for clarity, the vote so far, each vote we've taken has been 5-0.
Except sports announcer then.
Argentina 5.
Barely.
Okay.
Barely made it.
We're on the LEAP. The LEAP is an acronym for Local Educational Area Plan. It's a federal requirement. Just to explain how long it's been around, it's part of ESEA, which was adopted in 1965, and then came NCLB in 2001. So the LEAP has been around since 2001, NCLB. It's a requirement, and now we no longer have to submit it to CDE. Since ESSA, the transition to ESSA has not been terribly smooth because the state applies for waivers and things like that, and then the federal government says, no, you have to do this. So we still have to do this federal plan, but we don't have to submit it any longer. We just have to update it and then have it approved every 5 years. So I'm hoping it'll go away and we can just rely on the LCAT. So it's a low priority for me.
I just wanted, I have some questions on
Yes.
page 36 of 53. Not questions for you necessarily, Marilyn, but just for us to
General.
sort of discuss. I'm not really sure the strengths and the needs. Like in the first one, elementary, it says 91% of our students feel safe at school, but under the needs, it says 41% don't feel safe at school. So which, are the strengths what we're trying to accomplish, or?
The strengths should be, there's a typo. The strengths should be what we're doing well, but this comes from the CHICS, the California Healthy Kids Survey, and we do that survey every other year. So this comes from 2015 when we administered the survey.
Which, both sides? Which side of it?
Both.
I think specifically for your question, Jane, there's a few different, when it asks the questions about feeling of safety at school, there's different tiers of I feel always very safe, I feel safe, I don't always feel safe. And so think that's why your question's really, why does it look like it's a different stat for the same question? But isn't that what we're talking about? Is it's
Right, it's kind of like a Likert scale when the students answer, but the other thing that the California Healthy Kids Survey does, it asks much the same question in just a different way because they want their responses to be as valid as possible. You've probably all taken things like that, psychological tests, that ask you, gosh, they're asking me that again, but just in a slightly different way, and I think maybe that accounts for it, Jane. I'm not positive because I would have to go back and look at the actual questions. But I see that's a discrepancy.
So I just, I'm not trying to point out my conservative Midwestern upbringing, but 67% of our high school students admit to using marijuana in the past 30 days. Does our valley know that? Do people out there in the public know that 67% of our high school students are using marijuana? Which is really shocking to me.
We are just now getting back the data from this year's, and that is exactly, when we look at one of our goals in our LCAP, which is the sort of health and safety goal, I think that those are the kind of meetings we need to have that focus maybe on just an issue just like that. Like, do we know that this is what our students reported? And let's have a forum where we just talk about that and, the issues that we see.
I mean, I'm not one of those people, marijuana leads to heart drugs, I'm a Bill Maher fan, but it's just like, wow. I mean, and I know a lot of adults that smoke, which I'm just like, wow, in high school, that many. I mean,
well, I think the point is well taken. Do people know that? Like, is this something
are they okay with that?
Right? Do we need to work on it? Do we need to address it?
And
how
the
can
more
we address
concerning
it?
one there to me is the 57% of 11th graders were offered drugs on school property. That's really frightening.
How did we harvest this data?
The CHIC survey. We every 9th and 11th grader.
Every other
gets
year we do it?
Every
Yes.
other year.
And does it
seventh graders.
alternate the population, or is it just every other year and it's only
Every other year, 7th, 9th, and 11th.
Right, 7, 9, and 11.
12, so seniors and 10th graders don't get ever
No.
passed?
Right.
Well, then how do we get the data on elementary and middle school?
We 5th grade we did do in 2015. We didn't do 5th grade this
Not this
time
year.
because it requires active consent. Any elementary through 5th grade K to 5. 5th grade requires active consent, and we don't with active consent, just like if we did active consent with grades 7, 9, and 11, you don't get the demographic that you really want. You want a wide demographic to get valid data. And so in 2015, we did do active consent.
Active consent is like opting in.
Yes, parent has to say, yes, my child can take, whereas the other is passive consent. So unless they opt their child out in 7, 9, and 11.
And why are we doing the active versus the passive?
Well, we're doing passive because passive you get a much
Right.
wider demographic.
Right.
But in elementary school, you have to do active.
Got it.
Which means these elementary school statistics may be slightly skewed.
I can't hear you
From
the
backside.
air conditioning.
I said I shouldn't mumble. The elementary stats may be slightly skewed because our demographics aren't quite as
That's right.
broad.
When you have that active consent, it's a different demographic. It just truly is.
And a smaller sample size that's
Yep.
subject to more
Everything.
variability
Mhm.
and inaccuracy. Well, I agree. I mean, actually, that this information we're learning should be followed up on. I mean, I do think that marijuana statistic is pretty significant.
Well, we'll be
And
scrutinizing the
similar,
new
yeah.
data and
The
then
new
using
data.
that to drive
Mhm.
discussions and
Yeah.
topics.
And the safety, I would like to drive down on that. I mean, on the one hand, most accidents happen at home, so the rational person shouldn't feel safe at home, right? But these numbers, I don't know what it means that they don't feel safe. If there's any way we could ask questions to, are they don't feel safe from bullying, or they don't feel safe
From others.
I'm not sure what the other would be, but I think it would be important to know.
Well, I think Catherine White was doing a little thing that was a little more specific. I don't know if each site has chosen to do that or not,
Yeah.
but it was sort of saying, if, I don't feel safe on the playground or in the classroom.
Right.
And then even listing names, like, if she would see the same either adult or child's name listed as, I think she asked who makes you
She
feel
did.
unsafe or something. And then, she could do some health and wellness, our counselors coming in specifically with those people if they were repeatedly being listed as a bully on the playground.
Right, the names weren't publicly.
No.
Just wanted to.
Any other?
Sorry, I forgot to ask this in an email, Marilyn, on page 38 and 39. I'm not really sure, it looks kind of blank. Is that because it's this goal performance indicator? Is that simply because we've switched our focus?
We don't do that. We don't receive two-pay money or Title IV.
Okay.
So I had a little bit of trouble understanding how this this integrates with the LCAP. Can you explain that? If it's explainable.
I can't. This template on the LEAP is a 2007 template, so you just have to tailor it to the things we're doing today. So today we have the LPAC instead of the CELT, so you have to change some of those things. It doesn't.
Is it asking different questions? I mean,
It's still looking at student growth, professional development, academic achievement. So goal 1, or performance, not goal 1, goal 1's in the LCAP, but it's still looking at academic achievement. It still looks at professional development. It just frames it a little differently, but it's apples and oranges.
okay, I don't feel so bad. Thank you.
And it's an old template.
And you're an educated man.
That law isn't even, that law has sort of expired, or it's about to expire. So, right? The
NCLB.
Yeah, so it's, at some point, they're just gonna take it away.
Yes,
It's like-
and I'm hoping by next year.
Yeah.
The only reason, really, our last one went through 2019, but I thought, well, I think I better update it for a 5-year plan. Who knows, I may be in a rest home in 5 years, so I might not be doing it anymore, but I'm kind of hoping it'll go away next year. I'm really hoping. Keep your fingers crossed. Again, it's just something we have to do.
Well, I'll move to approve the renewal of the LEAP plan.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
It's a 5-0 vote.
One more thing.
The audience can't tell. There has been some confusion about our voting, so we're being more clear about it.
The CONAP, the consolidated application, it's always due June 30th. It has to be approved by the board. And really, the CONAP is just a vehicle. It's just a vehicle for your intent to apply for federal funds. That's what the CONAP is. And Patty is Patty here?
No.
She'll be coming. No. Okay. Patty works on the fiscal part, and I work on the programmatic part. You can see in the few pages that I gave you, you have to assure certain things are happening. But it's a vehicle for applying for federal funding.
I guess I would only ask, are we sure we're applying for everything that we could possibly qualify for?
Yeah, and some things might come back, like Title IV is safety, and so that might come back. Who knows? And then we'll apply for it.
Do we have consultant? I'm sure there are people who consult help you identify anything, or how do we identify what we're potentially eligible for? It was funny. The one question I was going to ask Greg Grant was, but I'll find out in another meeting, was, what sources of money are we talking about?
Well, like Title I.
Yeah, I mean, how do we just, when there's some new program out there, how do we become aware of it, or is that just not really?
I get a lot of emails.
Yeah.
A lot of emails. And project directors. So we talk a lot about these kinds of things in project directors and what they're using their Title I money for, how's their Title II going, and have you made your outreach to private schools, and so on and so forth. So a lot of that information comes through project.
To clarify, when we is it Title II where we
2A.
Make it available to the private schools?
Correct. Actually,
do they bring money when they come?
Okay. Actually, all federal program monies are available to private schools. Private schools within the Ojai attendance boundary and private schools that touch the boundary. Carpinteria, Ventura, Mupu, Santa Paula, and Cuyama. All of those districts are eligible for federal funding. So you have to reach out to those schools, but usually the private schools don't have the free and reduced lunch population, so they don't apply. They usually do apply, the ones at least in the Ojai Unified Attendance Area, they usually do apply for the Title II because there's no other requirement, it's just professional development. So they usually take advantage of that. Title IV we haven't had in a while. And the Title II, sometimes like Title I, just say if you had a person who qualified, you have to give, it's not money that you're giving to them, it's services. So for example, if we use our Title I services to buy Chromebooks, then you would use your Title I money to buy a student a Chromebook if he or she qualified. Something like that. The only one that's money, and you don't give it directly to them, is Title II, the professional development. So just say Thatcher, but Thatcher doesn't usually doesn't take advantage. Just say Besant Hill. Besant Hill applies, and say they send a teacher to an AP conference, part of their professional development. Then they just come back to me with all the documentation, wanting to apply for federal funds, and then they get reimbursed, and that's how that works.
Out of our budget or just through the federal government?
No, out of our Title IIA. What we get as our allocation.
We get a,
So
do we get a
we
lump sum
allocate-
regardless of how
yes.
many people use it?
Yeah, okay, I'm going to just give you an example, and the figures aren't going to be right, but I'll give you an example. So when private schools say, okay, I want to participate in Title II, then they send me a document that says what their attendance is. Okay, then say we got $100,000, and so we have the we have the private school enrollment and our enrollment combined, and then it's a per pupil.
So we would get
So we
more
get extra
because of the pupils at the private school, we get extra funding.
Well,
No.
it's just whatever they allocate you.
No, so if they allocate us 100,000, let's just round off and say that we're at 2,500 students.
Right.
We would have all of that money to serve some population of our kids, but if there was 2,500 students in private schools, it's not
Right.
changing the number that we're being given.
That's right.
But now they would have a claim, the private schools, to 50% of
That's
that
right.
money, because now we have a denominator of 5,000 students of which they're able to pull from.
So that 100,000 is not determined by the number the way ADA
No.
is.
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
divided out according to the number.
That's
So it's just the number we get. Now I actually don't know how the Title II number is.
So you send them an annual email saying,
Yes.
you guys don't want to.
Always
wanna
in
do
May. In May, I reach out to the private schools, both, as I said, in our attendance area and the districts that touch our district. And do you want to participate in federal funding? And usually the ones that touch our district, I'll get 2 or 3 emails back. And then I send letters to the ones in our attendance area, and then I get maybe 50% back who want to participate.
And do we get to participate in CARP? I mean, is it vice versa? So if we touch on
that's
them, do we
interesting.
get to,
Okay,
you know?
when I go to project directors, for example, like the project director in Ventura, she has to send letters to all the private schools in our attendance area because Ventura Unified touches us.
Oh, so it's just private. The
Right.
public
It's
schools
just
are on their own. It's
That's
just
right.
Yes,
got it,
and
got
it's
it.
just private, nonprofit,
Got it.
not for profit. And we have a directory. CDE has a directory of private nonprofit schools, and I have to look at the directory, Ventura County, and see all those schools that touch OHA Unified.
And it's still your tax money supporting private schools.
That's right. It's our tax money supporting supporting students, really.
But yeah, private
Private
schools.
schools.
Sure.
Oh, right. But that's part of the, that's certainly, you can understand how
Mhm.
there's a
And it's
And then
philosophy
what about
that we-
special ed funding? What, because we give special ed funding to the private schools as well.
The
How is it?
special ed preschool and the 3010 resource. That's the
Title I.
IDEA.
Yeah,
IDEA dollars do get allocated out there as well.
that's Title I, 3010. Yeah.
3020 then maybe?
Oh, then I don't know.
It's the IDEA. It's the special ed federal dollars.
Yeah, okay.
And so how does I don't know, how does the federal government determine our allocation?
I don't,
Is that
I don't
based-
So
know
they-
that.
So if you recall, our Title I dollars did just go up pretty significantly in the past 2 years, and it wasn't necessarily that our population that we were serving increased. It was that the demographic area of I think it's primarily our zip code that they were looking at. That is what had the increase in low-income families. And so even though our district did receive that increase, it was not proportionate to the extent to which we were serving new kids that fit that category again, as opposed to it was the
So-
community.
Census data.
So census
Mhm.
data is,
Any more questions? Anyone? And we're approving your seeking these funds. Thank you for doing it.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. 5-0.
5-0. Oh,
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Thank you, Marilyn.
You are free to leave also.
That's all right.
You know, Jane, one of my perks as president is to be the you're free to leave guy.
You want everyone to stay, I know.
And now we move to 7.4.5, the budget.
Sure, so I'm going to be reviewing this. We did talk about pretty extensively, and Patty had a great presentation for us at our first regular meeting of the year or of the month. And so this is going to be briefer. It's going to really focus on what the changes were between the budget we were looking at on June 5th and the budget that we have now. Most significant thing that took place was the governor and the legislature actually approved to a budget compromise. It's been approved. And so the biggest change to that budget compromise was most significant for us and what you see in this budget, a reduction by half of the one-time dollars coming to public schools, us included. So you'll see that resulted in about $400,000 drop in our revenue for this coming year. Now, I do want to warn, or I guess maybe
Caveat.
thank you. Warn isn't the right word, but we do fully anticipate that our overall revenue, when you're looking at the multi-year projection, will actually look very similar to what we saw at the beginning of the month. Because what the governor and legislature agreed to was they pulled money off the table from one-time dollars, but they put some of it back in through ongoing LCFF dollars. And we just didn't have our calculator updated by CDE in time to be able to have these new revenue numbers for us at budget adoption. But you will see a change in LCFF at first interim. So when this budget comes back to you in the fall, you'll see an LCFF increase of about $150,000, and that's ongoing money. And so when you multiply that over those 3 years, that's why it should fully make up for the loss of one-time dollars that we just experienced. Also, the good news, of course, as you guys recall, the budget we put forward to you at the beginning of this month did anticipate a budget surplus. That surplus was in excess of $1 million. Now we're looking at only just below $7,000 surplus, but either way, again, the one-time dollar reduction didn't actually impact our budget planning for this coming year. Of course, as we have each year, in order to balance our budget for the multi-year projection, we do have to assume staffing reductions in both the 1920 year and 2021. However, that too will change again at first interim when we have the ending fund balance that we complete this year with, as well as when we have the new LCFF projections.
So on those staff reductions, are those cumulative? It's a 225 budgeted reduction each year?
Exactly, that's correct. That's right.
Can I ask where that $15,000 number came for the district website and communications?
It frankly is a budget placeholder right now until we develop a more complete plan. The main software that we've looked at that I will likely be putting forward or moving forward with is a software called Apogee. They redo the district website as well as, for those fans of The Office, I'll mention that it's a lot like, what was the character's name? Ryan Howard's Woof application. Does anyone remember that? Woof, when he had an application that you would woof someone and their fax would go off, their email, their phone, and every other possible place that they can be communicated with. Apogee is similar to that in that you're able to get your content into a single location, and with the push of a button, it goes to Facebook, it goes to a district Twitter account if that existed, the website, as well as to email, text, can have voicemail, and so really, as well as they create an app for each school site. And so you're able to have families download an app that has, the cafeteria menu plan for the month and other information like that. And so that program is $13,000, $13,500, I think. And so I made sure we had enough at least for that. But again, we are going to be putting forward a more significant communication strategy coming forward in the fall.
And that's not a subscription, that's a one-time software purchase.
It is an ongoing subscription. If that's the one that we go with, then that's the startup cost to create the district website and the enhancements to the school websites and the app, and then ongoing. Do either of you remember about $6,000? Was that the ongoing cost? Like $3 per ADA, something about like that. So about $6,000 as an ongoing annual cost. But yeah, so Jane, what we want to do is make sure that we acknowledged and begin moving forward with the requests that came out of this meeting as far as really prioritizing some of those, either investments in the infographics to have LCAP more meaningful, or in some of those sorts of, creating literature that we can get to our realtors to make sure that when they're, having prospective home buyers in the Valley tour homes, that they're also able to see the great schools that we have. But without having a definitive plan for it, we just want to make sure that we had something in the budget to begin to allow us some flexibility, and then we'll be putting forward something larger in the fall.
It's not a large number, but maybe it jumped out at me because it was the last page. The negative Nordoff ASB fund. I noticed all the other ASB funds were positive. How does an ASB fund get negative?
It's because we have...
in the book.
In the actual booklet. So Nordoff does have cash flow challenges quite often. When you think about, let's say, cheerleading, when they have to purchase their uniforms at the beginning of a season, those are very expensive. They end up spending nearly the entire year actually paying those off or fundraising for them. And so the Nordoff ASB does at times either be subsidized to give it a temporary loan to help with cash flow, or we do have to have general fund site dollars that help offset when we have students who aren't able to fully fund their uniform or their other item that is associated with the site.
Right. I'm just wondering if that could be done in advance so we don't end up with negative balances in our budget.
I'll talk with Patty and see what we can do for first interim.
Well, ASB is a kind of almost a, I'll call it private, but I mean that's money that's not really coming directly out of the
It is it's a separate fund. That's
Yeah.
right. So exactly, our general fund is our big budget, and that's the tab 2, and then we have all these smaller budgets, Measure J or Capital Facilities or ASB, which are separate accounts, separate
But
funds,
it's
completely distinct
it's
funds.
funded generally by students, and does the NTA help fund that too? Maybe.
I'm sure that there are some other
Yeah.
fundraisers that help bring money into it.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I also circled it. I mean, I looks like there's about a $35,000 delta on the team's expenditures versus the team's revenue. I don't know, if that's something we as a board, need to talk about at some point in terms of I know we kind of are operating in a legal environment in which we
That's right.
cannot ask people or demand people pay for certain things. So if the coach wants to do something with uniforms, then he can get some volunteer payments and then fundraise, or she, but they certainly can't compel anyone to pay for anything, right?
That's right. Well, yeah, for all purposes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyone have anything else? A little disappointing about the budget, I think, about the latest action from Sacramento, but
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, it's something that we've been talking about for a while, but, the past 5 years, we were seeing really good May surprises where new money was coming to us, and this was the governor's final year, and that he put forward a more aggressive budget in January, and so what ended up happening in May and ultimately was approved in June was not the same trend, and I think that we really do need to start planning that, especially with a new governor next year, that we're far more likely to see budgets like this than we are to see the big, nice additional revenue that was coming to us at the end of the school year.
anyone else? So we are asked to review and receive and adopt the adopted budget. Do you have someone want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve budget.
The 2018-19 adopted budget.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. It's 5-0 in favor. Now we move to the discussion of the Summit School facility and what potential uses during the coming school year during which classes are suspended.
Any public comment?
Yeah, we have public comments. I think before we start discussing it, we should hear from the public who want to speak on it. Thea, you want to start?
Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, I'm back. For the 2018-2019 school year, we would like to propose that OUSD advertise for, interview, and hire a facilities manager to oversee community uses of the Summit School site. It's important for the community and the school district to invest in Summit Elementary. This person could oversee the operation of activities supported by OUSD, specifically some activities that we would like to see that will require OUSD support our childcare facility, especially for after school. Maybe even expanding it to something like a preschool would be a possibility. Funded hours for community use of the computers. We had that last year. A lot of English learners took advantage of it. There was a English learning thing that was run in conjunction with the computer use. We'd like to see that continued for the next year. There are also several current free uses that we would like to see continue. Most of you know what those are: the 4-H, the community garden, the Caesar Water Board, and also for community meetings, Ojai Fire Relief, Upper Ojai Council. And we're also open to adding additional activities that are brought to us by the school district, by the Upper Ojai Council, by the community members, such as like enrichment classes, exercise classes, recreation classes. A lot of people have a lot of ideas, and we would welcome that, but I really want to focus on what the school district would support. what the community can help you create up there, some type of transition since we don't have the school, something that shows that we have a presence, that we have the school district support, that we're open, it's a free service like the computers and such. Thank you.
Thea, can you tell me who we is? Thea, can you tell me who we is? Who are you representing as we?
So I'm the treasurer of the current PTO, which has been dissolved because there is no school. But we are creating a new nonprofit that's called Condor Kids, and it was just going to be focused on the community children in general, not so specific to the school being open. That way we can support the children that are up there and whatever they would like to do, education, enrichment, recreation, something that's like more community driven, but for children.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Jim Bailey.
It's hard to follow Thea. She's got a lot of skin in this game. So, given the situation for Summit School, Tasha and I and my staff at Rock Tree Sky have talked a lot about, what the opportunities that could be over there. And finally, we've gotten to a place where, lately there's been some excitement as we think about what an opportunity to responsibly assist the community, in keeping this a vital hub, as well as a place where kids are, because it is, after all, a school. So we're hoping that the board would consider directing the district staff to maybe think about a license agreement for the east building, at least, with Rock Tree Sky of Summit School. And I think of any potential interested party that we'd be uniquely capable to partner with the district. We've been running this program next door for 2 years. It's going really well. It's sustainable. We live down the street. We're community members, and I feel that I've tried to maintain my behavior and my responsibility in the Ojai community as a very responsible member. So we don't enter into this lightly, in thinking about even the possibility of having our program for that year be at that site, and at the same time taking on the management of keeping it open to all the families for after school care, for 4-H, for Upper Ojai Relief Center, search and rescue, all those things. It's responsibility, and you want somebody who's going to be able to handle that and do that job well. We have administrative staff who that can be a piece of what they do, the calendarization of those things. But in anticipation of that, I went down and met with Barbara Kennedy at the Oakview Park and Resource Center, and she is willing to come up and walk and tell me what she does down there, how we could help maintain the site up at Summit. So she's willing to be a supportive player. We went to the neighborhood council meeting up there to see if they might have some ideas. It's a little too soon, it seems. There's still some development to happen in the Upper Ojai neighborhood council meeting, and it might be a while. But the thing that I think is important is there needs to be some flexibility with whoever is going to be the driver or the primary, the primary tenant, if you will, or somebody who's going to be on site most of the time. So I see it as being, you need to have some flexibility there. There will be different groups. Thea mentioned some groups today, and Barbara said, you're going to have groups that are going to come in, and then they're going to go. And so you have to see what is the next group that wants to come. And, I have a relationship with Trevor through the work that had to happen in Upper Ojai, and that group, I'd like to sit on that council and assist there as well. So I think it'd be one, an honor, and two, I think it'd be a wise choice to consider working with us to keep that site open for kids and the community. And so we're interested. And I guess my question for the board tonight or district is, what is your interest? What are the details of the process? And what's a timeline like for that? So thank you.
And let me ask
Yes,
Jackie, you,
please.
what's your timeline?
Well, we've got a place and it's great, but it's a little tight. So, my timeline would be is sometime before September. The sooner the better. I would have to move a lot of materials. I'd have to move workstations and things like that, and bring some parents in, and get some work days and things like that going. But as soon as possible. It could be as soon as possible, or August, mid-August at the latest. But the sooner the better. It's it's an operation, and it's going to take some work. It'd be my summer, right? So, but I'm ready to move.
You mentioned a desire for a 3-year lease. How solid are you on that number?
It doesn't have to happen. It'd be a lot of work, right? So if it couldn't be, I see that in the legal statement that it can't be, and so I have to take a risk benefit analysis and say, if there's enough kids to open Summit back up next year, then it goes back to the district and Summit. And, I have to hopefully have some heads up or awareness of that well in advance enough to, find a new space, or potentially keep the lease on the space I'm at, depending on, what district needs financially for the space. If there's a way to do some kind of good faith, like, hey, you're going to help keep this going for the community up there, you're going to manage these pieces for us, make sure Thea and the program she's interested in have access to these things after school, all of which we've talked about, then, if there's a better price, I can keep the space I'm in open. You know what I mean? And so that would be a real easy walk back across the parking lot. Otherwise, it does take some looking, and it is a risk. So, thank you.
Thanks. Marianne Radcliffe.
Marilyn, I had to laugh. She says 5 years from now, where she's going to be running circles around all of us 5 years from now. I guarantee it. On my way here, I passed Summit School. Every parking space is filled. Every single space on either side of the road is jam-packed with cars from over 100 people who are at the meeting that the county is holding on how to rebuild their homes. As you know, Upper Ojai was per capita lost the most homes than anywhere else in the Thomas fire. The reason that a lot of those people are not here talking about how they're going to use Summit School is because they are using Summit School. And that's the way it has to be for that community, because Summit School has served Upper Ojai for 107 years. I definitely support having a facility manager. I'm going to leave that up to your great discernment to determine. But all the things that Summit School, through the wonderful support of Ohio Unified and really dedicated parents, has provided childcare. I wouldn't have had any of my kids, even though I live in the Ohio School District, none of my kids would have gone to Ohio Unified without that. Childcare is key. A preschool that we had with Mrs. X, operated preschool, was absolutely key to bringing myself and so many more students into Ohio Unified. The community use of the computers is incredible. The facility for English learners, all those are free OUSD supported services that have to continue. A library, we don't have a library there. So many other great ideas you're going to hear about, exercise classes, elder care, just some wonderful, exciting ideas for 1 year. And I'm very adamant about that because there's going to be, without OUSD support of school reopening in 2019-20, there's a concerted and definite plan for a charter school that I would love for you to support, because that's a win-win for the district, because you're going to be losing students who would otherwise be going to Matilla and Nordhoff through a charter if you choose to abandon Summit entirely. I do have to say, and I'm sure you know that you've been informed, that 14 school students from OUSD have left as the day that Summit was closed. Those are not sixth graders who have been promoted. Those are 14 students. That's by my estimate of the 7,388. That's about $92,000 loss. If you use the estimate that Andy gave, which is about $10,000 per student, that's $126,000 that are lost. That's a huge chunk of the budget. That's 1 year. It's compounded over future years if those students do not come back to OUSD. Those are it's a huge hit, and it's a huge loss, and I could not be sadder about that. I could not believe when I read this agenda today. I'm so disappointed. You guys have made a liar out of me, and I hate to use such negative terms, but really, a license versus a 7-Eleven committee public participation process? What did we all do for 6 months? What's that big binder with all of our participation in the community? And you're talking about how to get around community involvement. You need and you want community involvement. Don't talk about a license. Yeah, maybe that's something that you have as your discussion point, but really, the 7-Eleven committee is vital. And when everyone says to me, and I ask them, I say, what do you want to see at Summit School? And they tell me, and I'm like, great. And they're like, no, we think that there's some, that they want to leave it empty or whatever. Please pass this around, Kathy. And I say, no, there's a process. It's through the legislature that if they're going to close a school, they have to have community involvement. So please, let's be honest with people. Let's be sincere, and let's promote goodwill as we go forward with what we're going to be doing for the future. Again, I support hiring a facility manager and have it be for 1 year, and that we work toward a seamless opening of Summit in 2019-20 by keeping the school resources there intact. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I would like to respond to that, Kevin.
Okay.
It's saying the reason we're not doing a 7-Eleven is because we don't want a long-term agreement with someone, because we want to reopen the school. That's why we're not doing 7-Eleven. We're doing a short-term during the year that it's not in operation.
Well, yeah. Let me add something, because Marianne, you said it wasn't somehow we were calling you a liar, which I have no idea what you're even talking about.
No, liar out of me when I'm saying there's a process.
Okay, but let me say this, and I've said it before, but I'm not sure people understand. We meet here. So when you say we, the last time we discussed Summit was the last time we were here discussing Summit. But for a private meeting that I can have with Andy about our agenda. So everyone needs to understand these ideas are ideas. We are here legitimately, authentically, to learn what our options are. And one of our options, apparently, is to have a short-term license to use the facility up there at Summit. We would not be doing our job if we didn't consider all the possibilities. So, they include, and Marianne, you may disagree, but that's fine, and you've told us you disagree. But there are various views on subjects like whether a 7-Eleven or a license. And again, as Jane points out, what we're here to do tonight is to talk about what is going to happen in the interim while we, as Jane said, hope to stage for the return of school at Summit under the auspices of the OUSD, or who knows what other possibilities there are, if you mentioned. So there's no conspiracy here. There's no, when you say a license, here you are. These are the possibilities.
You can have, the education code is you can rent.
Okay. So if you have a legal disagreement with something that we ultimately decide to do, then I'm sure you, as an advocate, will do what you feel necessary. But to be clear, we are just looking at the information available and then trying to learn about them and make a decision. So I want to hear from Jessica Colburn.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Jessica Colburn. I was born and raised in Upper Ojai. Sadly, my parents are one of the survivors. Their home did burn down in the fire. So I have, through that process, gotten to know Trevor and kind of reinvested myself in the valley up there. Trevor, myself, Carol, Holly, the three of us are the founding members of the Upper Ojai Neighborhood Council. And our whole goal with that is it's a unique area up there. There's no question about it. We're separated from Ojai. We're separated from Santa Paula. We are kind of our own little island up there. I went to school at Summit School. I graduated. I was student of the year up there. I remember barbecues and 4-H. My dad put the flagpole up. My roots are very, very deep up there, 40 plus years. And, it's terrible that it had to close. I think we all saw the writing on the wall. It's unfortunate you had the hard job of making that decision. But as a board member for the council, our goal is to support the community. And it's obviously a very emotional thing, the school closing. It is a hub to the community up there. I mean, for years, that's where we did everything. 4-H meetings, that's where we had barbecues. We all got together. That was our central meeting place. And that's kind of waned a little bit. And so our goal is to bring that back and make that the focus of the community. And whatever the community at large decides is the best thing for it. And that's our goal. So we're not after a specific thing. We're here to support every person that comes and says, we think this is going to be a great idea, and support the community that wants that. And so I think that as you're making this decision, of course, you're going to make the decision that's best in your eyes, for the board and for the district, but really keep in mind that that is a hub for that community, and whether it be just using it as a meeting space or making it something more, us as the council members are committed to making sure that whatever decision is made is going to be followed through with the support of the community, of course, and that we do it in a way that's suitable for the board and under the terms that the board decides. And, we obviously want to make everybody happy, and that's may not happen, but the community at large is our main focus. So it's suffered a terrible amount. I know it's easy. I live in town, am dying to get back up there to help my parents rebuild their property. If you haven't spent any time up there recently, I recommend going up and just soaking in the valley. It's a special place. We just used the school on Sunday for Survivor Circle. We have the community, the survivors that have lost their homes, come together. We have a barbecue. You've been so gracious to let us use it. And we sit and we talk, and we actually had a kind of a powwow to discuss items to go on the agenda of the meeting that happened before this meeting, so that their voices can be heard. And that is my goal, is to make sure that the survivors' voices and that community at large is not forgotten. So I just wanted to introduce myself and say where I stand and who I am. I know several of you. And so I just wanted to say hello, and that we really, our focus is to provide something that the community at whole wants, and to be able to keep it a hub up there. I think it's really critical that that is a central area, and I'm sure you're aware of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else feel like speaking?
I'm Louise Oseguera, and I'm Thea's mother, and we live across the street from the school. And we've lived there for almost 20 years. And I think I've never been involved with the school because by the time we moved up there, I didn't have any children in school, but now I have grandchildren. And I just want to say that I would like to know what things the school board would support. You know, whether it's childcare or whether they're going to do the computer lab, or what exactly could the school board support? And then maybe the people in the community could fill in with the rest, the things that are important to them. But I think they need to know, or we need to know, meaning everybody that lives up there, what exactly the school board would support in that community for that school for the next school year, 2018 to 2019. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things we're here to discuss.
Right.
What can we, what could we, what
Exactly.
will we?
I mean, I'll tell you, Jim, that one of my concerns is just I don't know that if our timetable is going to be sufficiently expeditious for you, because we're really at the beginning of deciding what can be done. And Mary Ann, you know, your point is well taken. I mean, we obviously need to comply with the legal environment in which we're operating. I mean, I think from my perspective, what we're trying to do is just fully use Summit in the way that the community supports during this interim year. And if we, you know, obviously if there was to be some school there, Jim Bailey would want some kind of assurance that he could do that. At the same time, it appears that the legal environment won't really allow us to enter into a really binding agreement like that. And I mean, it's complicated. Let's put it that way.
I think Trevor wanted to talk.
Do I just raise my hand or?
Yeah, you can speak.
Well, while you're walking up, I'm glad you're speaking because you're a Facebook celebrity. And,
I'm trying to one up.
well, I appreciate that.
Well, I really enjoyed being at the last meeting because I found your comments just to be really entertaining. So, and I'm happy I'm here. But I was sitting in the back. I'm Trevor Quirk. I was sitting in the back and I whispered to Jessica that I felt like I'm a lawyer and I go to court hearings, and sometimes I find myself watching these family court hearings, and you listen to the judge making the decisions on what is in the best interest of the child. And I feel like I'm watching one of those court hearings where you guys are all the judges and we have this child out here and we're all trying to figure out like what's in the best interest of this child, right? And then I heard Kevin say that it was the board's intention on reopening the school, or looking to reopen the school in the, was it 19 or 20 school year?
Yeah.
And I didn't fully understand that from the last meeting because from my perspective, sadly enough for a lot of people, I thought that once the school board, and I still think this, and this is just my opinion, once the school board made the decision to close that school, it's closed. That, you know, there's a sign that says it's been open since 1912, I think is on there. 11, sorry. And so I was really saddened by it, but, you know, the school board made the decision. I think we all supported that decision. It was a very difficult one. But to then reopen the school is going to be even a more difficult decision, at least as a public school, because the demographics just don't play out up there. Unless there's something crazy that happens that enables the school board to draw the students from the valley or from Santa Paula to effectively reopen the school. So I thought that the school board, and I heard Mr. Shanahan and Mr. Whipple, I think you guys were on the same page from the last meeting, was, all right, we made this decision, now what? So now what do we do? And I think the board has, Kevin's put two different questions. What do we do immediately for the school? And then what do we do in the long term? And my fear is that if the board makes a decision in the immediate future, whether it's Mr. Bailey's class operates in one section, it's setting up kind of like a false hope or false expectation for the homeowners up there. If the school board makes a decision and says, look, we're going to make this into a community center, which it could be, and I think you guys are hearing that it needs to be, such a cherished place for the community. Well, a year, and then it has the back end goal of reopening the school, and it's a year community center, and everyone's loving it, going to child care, computer classes, gardening classes, whatever, because you've heard it all up there, right? And you will hear it all if you give people the opportunity. Well, that goes on for a year and everyone loves it, and then all of a sudden, hey, guess what, Upper Ojai? We're reopening the school. Everything that you've been doing from a year is off the table. So as the board's considering all of these different options, what's in the best interest of the child or the community, I guess, I hope it would take into consideration, well, look, if we're going to do something immediately, it's going to have long-term implications for the community as well. So I don't know how to square those two. I just hope that, I know it's phrased as two different questions, but to me, it's hard to discuss one without discussing the other. And I don't envy your job. If I was putting myself, if I'm on the school board, I would want to know, what does Upper Ojai want, right? You're hearing from distinct people in the room, but, and that's one of the reasons we formed the council, not to just address that issue, because there's so many different issues up there, but what's in the best interest of Upper Ojai? Does the school, this was raised by Mr. Schmidt, Phil Schmidt, former county clerk, does the school have to still be used as a school resource? I think there was a comment that was made, I guess the family deeded it to the school, and part of the deed was that if it's not used as a school function, it goes back to the family. I don't know if that's true. If it is, it needs to be explored, because that's major implications. I guess my time's up and up and up, but I'm here to answer any questions about what the homeowners are thinking up there and what Upper Ojai residents want. I've been up there 12, 13 years. I don't have the 40-year interest like Jessica does. I've gotten hammered because my kids don't go to Summit. They go to Topa Topa. So I don't want to go into those issues, but just looking forward. Y'all made a decision. We support that decision. It's just what's in the best interest moving forward. So thank you for your time.
So
Who's we? Who is we?
When you say we support that decision,
Oh,
are you talking about the board, the council,
I meant,
or
yeah,
just your
the
family?
council, and I support the school board's decision.
From the people who are at your meeting, over 50 of them who support the school and some school.
So let me, I'd like to bring some school board perspective to this. Thank you for all the comments. So I'll bring my perspective to this. So with respect to the two different discrete issues, so I don't know what will become of the school, but I do know that from my perspective, I want to explore all options for the school for the 1920 school year. I know that already people are talking about doing a charter, as Marianne talked about. I know that these things will happen, but from my perspective, all of this needs to be done in an orderly way, and it needs to be done authentically with, it's not crazy. There's, Oak Park draws kids from all over the place. It's not crazy to imagine that something could be done up at Summit, which would attract people to come to Summit. I don't think it's crazy. So, like I said, it takes drivers, it takes kids, but I don't foreclose that. I had some communications with people who were interested in Summit, in particular what will become of the school part of Summit, and I had indicated that I, as this president of the board, had felt like this discrete question of what to do with the facility this coming year is indeed a separate question from what we do to stage for potentially returning as a school, and that the question of the facility needed to be discussed very, very quickly, whereas the discussion about the school is going to be a longer conversation, and maybe everyone needed a breather, and we would start that conversation in August. And as we said, we committed to an ongoing conversation, not just bringing it up at some meeting and leaving it, but an ongoing conversation about the possibilities. So that's kind of the context. But there's more. There's also the fact that we are a school board, and that is a school. And so unlike a city council or the supervisors of Ventura, our exclusive obligation is to the school district and the school children. So that is a little different than just us asking what does Upper Ojai want abstractly, because that's really not our job. We want to support Upper Ojai, but our first and foremost job is to make decisions on behalf of the school district, of which Summit is part. This year not having school, but it's part of our district. So that's kind of, I think, the context. Now, one interesting thing is it seems to me, maybe I'm wrong, but broadly speaking, it seems to me that pretty much any use of Summit is that's not school related is going to not take place during school hours. So, I mean, I'm guessing, I don't know. It seems to me intuitively like if a school, if there's going to be the Upper Ojai Council that wants to use it, or yoga or class, those will probably happen sometime in the hours between 3 and when you go to sleep, not in the middle of the day. Maybe I'm wrong about that. So that's kind of where I am. And I also, Trevor, you brought up, and I've heard rumors of it, that there's some restriction on the deed up there. Well, obviously you need to know about that, you know? I think currently we don't think there is, but you know, we heard the same thing about San Antonio during Marianne's 7-Eleven committee. Turns out there isn't one, but there was discussion about whether there was some restriction on the deed at San Antonio. So these are all in play, and we're here to have the discussion. That's my laying the table.
And I think, Trevor, at the last meeting, I think the reason we had such a contentious discussion and vote was because of that very reason. Part of us, some of us, were feeling we need to make a decision and make a decision for the future so people know, am I going somewhere for a year? Am I going somewhere forever? But the other half was saying, but it's June 6th. You know, the 7-Eleven committee met in October about closing a school a year and a half later. So that part of the group was feeling like you can't close this school forever in this one night's discussion. There has to be more discussion about what can we do for it? What are the possibilities? What is the likelihood of it? So I think we continue to say we don't know about the future, but we have not said no to the future. So whatever decision we make has to take into account that there might be a future school Summit returning. There might not be. We haven't gotten that far, but we have to at least continue to allow that to be an option and not make a decision to do something there that will prevent us from reopening Summit the next year. I think obviously it's important if we know about, but I thought we already knew that deed was looked into.
We looked into it 2 years ago. There was nothing on the deed that we saw, but we will once again do it. If you're saying that someone from the county office has suggested that, then we will make sure that we have a title company that's verifying for us.
From what I understand, it was looked into and it does not exist.
Yeah, that's
since our neighborhood council meeting. So in the last 2 days, I was told it does not exist.
That's what I.
And to be clear, what we're talking about is there's the idea that whomever gave, I guess it was a gift, or somehow in the process by which the Summit property became part of the school district, whatever deed was associated with that had some restriction that said if at some point this continues to be part of the public school, then it will revert back, or there will be some result of that. And
that was the rumor, that it was given to the school, to the district, to be used as a school, and if it wasn't used as a school, that it would go back to the family that donated it. But that is not the case. It was sold to the Summit School District back in the 20s or something, and there's no mandate that it has to be anything specific. So.
Well, and again, we're not going to take anyone's word for it. Right. I think we've already looked, but Andy's. You never know what people will think on TV.
Can I?
Yeah.
No, I guess I think it was during the last meeting. It was Mr. Whipple or Mr. Shanahan, or one of you said, I just want to take a moment and read the district mission statement. And I was doing that during the last meeting. I'm finding myself doing it right now as you were talking. Because it says develop in all the students, right? And so is the school district's mission just to develop in all the students? Because if it's reading its mission that narrowly, then it's clear to what or to which the school should be utilized for. And that's to develop in students, not to develop in community. To me, because when you were speaking, I was wondering, well, great point. Because what's the function of a school property that closes, given all the different potentials that have been identified? Charter school, things that Thea was talking about, things that Jim's talking about. And if the school board says, no, our mission is just to develop the students and educate the students, then it should be geared towards, well, let's look for the 1920 future and try and bring the school back.
Well, I think that our that's to the extent that the mission statement says that, I think that it's not fully accurate, because I think what we recognize is that the students are part of a community, and I think more so than ever with Measure J, where the community supported providing money to the school district, that we really realize and agree that all of our schools have to be multi-use. They have to be available to the community. We've tried more than in the past to really make sure that we're making the schools, the fields, the facilities available. We've had Andy's done a great job with Cheryl and the rest of the staff, and we used to have sometimes excessive fees. There were times when a brownie troop or somebody wanted to use the facilities, and we were, charging them unreasonable amounts of money. And we've really tried to get rid of all that stuff and say, no, this is a community. David is our facilities head, and we really are making feel like, no, we are a community resource, especially in a small community. So anyway.
Plus, I think that the decision we made to close Summit for next year was with the students in mind. We were feeling the education that we could provide them at that location with the number of students and the number of teachers was not what our mission, we weren't able to accomplish that. So we would still be thinking of that in our future plans. Well, reopening it, check what's going to be different from our choice from this year.
And I would argue that developing in all students the knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary to critically think. I think so many of these, I look at the broad picture of education, and education doesn't happen just in a classroom. It happens on the playground, it happens at barbecues, it happens in the community, it happens when your parents are able to communicate with the school because you've learned English. It happens when you have access to the computers after school. I think so much of that really does fit in the understanding of education for our students.
I guess my challenge is, because there's a lot of good ideas here, but I kind of have to echo a little bit about what Kevin said, is that I'm having trouble finding where it's my responsibility to provide the community resources that they're seeking, unless it's grounded in education and the students. I totally support multi-use of our facilities. I think that's how you become a part of the community. But a lot of these ideas are not free. And one of our other responsibilities is the fiscal stability and viability of this district. So I look at some of these things, like the idea of hiring a facility manager, and I wonder, when I look at the 5.0 layoffs over the next 2 years, why would I do that? How could I do that? If I'm laying off staff, how can I hire a facilities manager who's not going to be teaching, who's not going to be overseeing any pedagogical program at all, to run a community center? A community center, to me, brings to mind either city or county money, because that's who does community facilities, not a school district. So my concern is how to maintain it as an educational facility. We didn't vote to surplus the property. That does take a 7-Eleven. We've already done that, but that's not the vote that we took. And I think that was deliberate on the part of this entire board. Our primary disagreement, as Jane articulated, was what to do having made that decision. And so I think we had an obligation to preserve the integrity of the district. And I'm open to a lot of these things. And there are a few things here that actually might be able to be done in conjunction potentially with the community college district. There are some workforce development funds out there. They do, our district, the district gets full apportionment for enhanced ESL classes. There's WIOA, workforce, I don't know what it's called. Anyway, there's some grant money for workforce development stuff like we talked about before. So there might be some things that could be done out there like that, as well as some other multi-use kind of stuff. Rock Tree Sky, I think that's great. If you're open to the kind of, the idea of a proprietary lease, as you've read, requires 7-Eleven and it requires all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Personally, I'm not ready to go there over the long term. I'm willing to give Summit more time to figure stuff out. But clearly, if the numbers don't change, there's going to need to be some other use there. If it's educational and it serves the community as well, I'm interested in that. But for me, I would have to understand the economics because to me that's really important. And so my question when I look at all of this stuff is who pays? Where's the revenue come from? So that's my concern.
One question that immediately came to my mind is that I know we had talked, we're providing a special bus, I know, for the Summit kids to get down the hill, but we talked about after school daycare. So tell me what we might be able to do. I mean, is that evolved at all? Do we have more ideas about it?
So we are going to be providing after school care at San Antonio until the bus is able to arrive, which will be about 20-25 minute gap from the time school gets out to when the Upper Ojai bus returns. That's going to be provided by the districts. We'll fund that portion so no family has to pay because the bus isn't there on time. If families want to remain in childcare, right now the only option is remaining at San Antonio. We are very open to the possibility of running an after-school program up there. We don't see a way that we can do it in a financially viable way as a district entity. So it potentially would need the former PTO or the new Condor. Was it Condor Kids?
Condor Kids.
Well, that's a fitting name. That's the name of the after-school program now. So if the board wants us to explore those types of opportunities, then we certainly can. But right now, we don't see a way in which the district could actually provide that for those 2 hours from 3 to 5 or 3:15 to 5:36 in a financially viable way.
Like in Toba, when we had after school, that was done through the private.
So the district has never provided, to your knowledge, have we ever? We've never provided after school care. So Las Posas was an entity that was here a couple years ago.
Yeah.
When Las Posas stepped out, the Park and Rec currently runs at Topa and Myers Oaks, and the PTOs run at San Antonio, have been running at Summit and at Miramonte. So the district, we never have been in the business of providing the after-school care. We make our spaces available for other entities to come in and to provide the care.
How about heard about the computer and the library?
So the computer labs are currently available, funded by the Ojai Education Foundation. They took action at their last meeting not to provide funding for Summit, given that it was not going to be open for this coming year. OEF.
Is it during an after-school period?
It was. What were the nights that you guys had?
5 to 7.
So OEF this past year was funding 2 hours, 2 nights a week at each one of our elementary sites to make available. Do you remember the numbers for how many users you guys were having on a regular basis?
It ranged from 0 to about 5 at Summit. Some sites had maybe 10 to 15.
More recently, Miramani and Myers Oaks were having, Miramani especially is having even,
Especially
you know,
those,
15 to 20,
schools
but
where they have kind of dense neighborhoods.
right. Right, but like San Antonio is having 0 to 2.
Right.
But we've been, so this year through a grant provided by OEF, funding was provided for 4 hours a week at each of those school sites to have the computer labs just generally open to the public.
So that was a person was there.
Yes.
That's right. So OEF funded,
the funding was
OEF
basically a
funded
person.
the person, exactly. That's right. So cost was about $16,000, I believe, for the year across the 5 sites.
Right.
Just over $3,000, $3,500 per site.
If we didn't have the funding, I mean, could the PTO just have people there? Could we authorize people just to volunteer and be there and have that be open that way?
For the computer lab or library?
Yeah.
We certainly could. The biggest concern be liability. So we want to make sure we can sufficiently cover that base, but there would be no legal requirement that would force us to have a staff member there by any means.
Can I ask Kim Eck, why is there no longer a preschool? Like, what happened to your preschool?
I ran that as a private preschool, and I ran it for only 3 mornings a week because the licensing requirements were beyond my capabilities. The bathroom especially is a little too far from the room I was using. There is a room there that could qualify now for licensing because it has a bathroom in it. That's beyond my capabilities as a person, but that's how I did it. I just did it privately, just ran under the radar.
But the only preschool we have is Place to Grow.
That's right, and that's based on requirements for IEPs, students on IEPs.
Louise and then Trevor.
Well, did the school district tell the people that maybe that you should consider Summit for the computer lab, even though they were closed, because the people were still there?
So they've also reduced the fund. Oh, are you talking about for OEF? So OEF also has reduced funding or has eliminated funding for San Antonio based on the numbers there, as well as I believe TOPA. So I think that they're actually focusing their support on the 2 sites that they felt the numbers this year warranted continuing support. I don't know whether or not I sit on the board of OEF. I was there for that meeting, but I don't know whether the decision not to fund Summit was most heavily determined by the school's closure or the lower numbers relative to some of the other sites. And as they're looking at their support of education within this community, their decision to not fund some of the sites was based on them feeling that wasn't the best use on a per dollar basis of how they best support education in the Ojai Valley.
So we're to see an intent of participation of higher numbers than between 2 and 5 at Summit. Do you think we could recover that?
I can't say. Dave, remind me, the Wi-Fi signal is currently accessible from outside as well, right? So, no?
And it was, the computer lab was really only open to students of the Ojai district, not to the general public.
Yeah, currently the radios are turned down for RSSI needs, but can be expanded to allow outdoor use. They just aren't because we have no outdoor tables. So, can be, yes.
Did we do that at all this year? The outdoor access? Okay.
We opened up the new teachers lounge outside, and we had students congregating in that outdoor area of the tables. That's the only areas in Miramani.
Thanks. So whether or not OEF would be interested in supporting ongoing funding of that site, they meet on July 12th. I can certainly represent that.
I mean, if someone were to come to them and say, look, we've got an enrollment of 15 people who want to do this, as opposed to, I mean, I understand if they're only getting 5 people because the cost per, a person split over 5 students is a lot more expensive than over 10 or 15. But if there was that level of interest, I mean, because presumably we're not going to continue to do what we've always done, right? Because that got us where we are. So if we're going to have these kinds of things, I would expect that the community and the council would flog them to death so that there is good attendance
to demonstrate that that need is there. Because, if we do something like this and 5 people show up, that's going to be worse, right? Because now it's proof that nobody cares.
That's not the way we throw parties, Mr. Shannon.
Right? So I'm just wondering if, for instance, the council were able to say, we've done our homework and there are 15 people who want to do this, seriously, would OEF change their mind? I'm just wondering.
And would it be possible, I keep hearing talk of the library as well being used. If the library was open, would that be more of a draw than just the computers? And is it possible to ask OEF to expand that and talk to the Ojai Valley Friends of the Library? That's part of their jurisdiction as well, and partner with them as well to open the library part of it.
Are the computers in the library?
No, they're 2 separate rooms.
Yeah.
They used to be though. They were together.
Yeah, but could they be? They could be, right? They could be brought back in, couldn't they?
Yeah, they used to be together before Mr. White came and separated them. But the other thing I wanted to mention, for 8 weeks during the summer, 2 of our sites are open at night for computer use, and it was funded by an adult education grant. So it's for parents for English, and then students can go for Lexia. So that's 8 weeks during the summer. And it's San Antonio on the east end and Miramani.
How many people attend?
I think it just started, I don't know.
Well, I really like the idea, just again a sec. I really like, I imagine I imagine a place, at night that would be open. We have to look at the liability issues and what our options are. But I love the idea of the library and the computers being available to the community generally. And of course, the kids are there with their parents and so forth. But I think that would be, that shouldn't be a particularly expensive or difficult thing for us to be able to do. And, there is a difference. We have to acknowledge someone who lives in the Upper Ojai. Is that right? The Upper Ojai? Someone who lives up there is obviously somewhat isolated. It's, easy to say, hey, go down to San Antonio, but that's, it's a haul.
Down the hill.
So anyway, I agree with what Michael said. There's a long list of things, of potential uses, but most of them have the spirit of a community kind of, yoga, the kinds of things that are great for a community, but are not really something that the school district can afford to do. They're done by NPAs sometimes. If there were an art class up there, it would be typically funded by an NPA. But I wish I feel like I need a little more understanding about what our options are in terms of our ability to basically allow the use of the facility.
And that's how I read those things. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't read like yoga or outdoor exercise classes as we're funding a teacher and people can come for free. I'm looking at that as we are allowing the use of this facility for a teacher to come in and people pay that teacher to access those classes.
So some of the things that I think we're having the exact conversation that we need to have. What I need some additional guidance on, though, is that we do, although I appreciate the comments, Kevin, as far as the approach that we've taken in the past 3 years to really try to open up our community assets, our schools, to the community for as low a cost as we can possibly manage without actually incurring expenses ourselves. I'm hearing clearly the board has an interest in making available the space for the community at as low a cost as possible, if any. I do need to hear, as far as right now, we do have pretty significant requirements and expectations when it comes to, again, insurance policies. If someone's going to be using the space and they're going to be having kids running around for, multiple hours with none of our staff there overseeing, there would be potential for liability needs. And so are we going to set up that hurdle that might make it really tough for the community member who wants to have a yoga class once a week who can't go fund a $1,000 liability policy, but otherwise, we would be requiring or expecting that from that person in order to use our spaces, especially something like yoga that has a high likelihood of potential injury. So as far as
theoretically, they're brought into the auspices of some umbrella group who carries the insurance.
that's precisely right. And so that was why, just going back to Mary Ann's concern about the way in which we were having the conversation, as Kevin said, this is the first time that the board has heard this information or been able to engage in this conversation since the decision on June 6th. One of the goals of this conversation was both for the board as well as for the public to understand that, let's just say the Upper Ojai Council said, we're ready to come tomorrow, we'll sign a lease, we'll do all these things, allow us to manage it, and a year from now we can all come back together and decide whether or not this is something we want to have ongoing. We have no legal ability to do that. That was what the purpose of this was saying, that 7-Eleven committee is absolutely required if we are going to simply lease out the property again, whether it's Upper Ojai Council or it's Jim's program. If we were going to give a single entity the use of the property to try to accomplish some of these goals, can't be done without assembling a 7-Eleven committee. And so if the board wants us to engage in that, then give me that guidance and we can begin the process of putting together 7-Eleven.
But isn't it more than just a 7-Eleven? We'd have to vote to surplus the property.
That's correct. Absolutely.
7-Eleven goes first.
Right.
That's right.
That's the requirement.
Right.
Regardless of what the 7-Eleven determines, they have to do that, and then we would have to vote on the surplus.
That's exactly correct. That's right.
Wait, can we clarify that? I have some other comments too, but let's zero in on this.
Yeah.
It seems to me that there's a distinction between 30-day leases, or rentals, which are allowed without a 7-Eleven committee, and how many 30-day rentals can you do before it becomes long-term?
How many are you saying if we were?
I mean, can you do it on a month-to-month basis?
I'm quite confident we cannot.
Yeah, my reading of Andy's, the array of possibilities is that it's not that you would want to avoid the length of 30 days plus or minus, but that instead you could only grant a limited use to whoever is going to use it for whatever period. You just can't give them, typically when you lease to somebody, the lease says you have exclusive use or some finite use, legal use, whereas we can't do that because we need to go through a 7-Eleven process to do that. So instead it would be kind of a, hey, you can use it as long as it works out, but you don't have any legal right. If tomorrow we showed up and said, sorry, it doesn't work anymore, you'd be left out. That would be that kind of idea. And just to be clear, there's no, this is not like an attempt to do something permanent and get around the 7-Eleven. The whole idea is just simply to be able to fully use it. Just make it useful. No one's trying to get around anything. I mean, I'm sure the people, regardless in the Upper Ojai, is not saying, "Hey, leave it vacant," because you have to do a 7-Eleven. I mean, that's not.
Where I'm coming from on the question is, we're not going to have school there like we understand school for a year. More than a year.
Right. Well, for the term of the school year, right.
Right. And so that's a lot of months.
Right.
And so I'm trying to understand what we can legally do and what we can't legally do during that term.
It sounds like all you can legally do is have a license agreement with someone, which does not guarantee them the property for anything.
You can also have a child care development program.
Right. But if we were to grant a license to one group, for example, could they get insurance that other people could work under the auspices of, like we discussed before? Like if the council or if Rock Tree Sky had a license agreement and had insurance, could somebody come in and do a yoga class under the auspices of that insurance? That would be my approach. As long as I'm talking, and this is my first time talking.
I think the more likely scenario is a PTO. PTOs have insurance, and they are able to do certain events, and they might be able to. I'm not talking about the school.
Can you have a PTO without a school?
Yeah, I should certainly think you can. Yeah.
PO anyways.
Yeah, it's a year of suspension. It's not, I don't think that, there's still school there. I was surprised that you canceled your PTO, because
I think the feeling of our PTO is 5 people, and 3 of the people on the PTO have been part of the PTO for, I want to say, over 4 years. And they did not come to any of the meetings. They were just so, I don't know, I hate to use this word because it's so strong, but disgusted. But the whole process, they just were completely done, and they voted to dissolve it, and that it wasn't a useful endeavor because there was no support from the school district, period. So there really wasn't much I could do to turn that tide, but could morph it into something different.
I would like to continue to say a couple of things. One, in terms of a facilities manager, I agree that I would have a hard time hiring a person to exclusively be the facilities manager for Summit. However, we have somebody managing our facilities, all of our facilities, and I don't understand why Summit wouldn't still be part of that. I think it would be. So I think there's that. I agree with, I like the idea of a lot of these things. The other thing I kind of disagreed with the sentiment of earlier was that it would take us a long time to maybe do something. I don't understand why it would take us a long time to do something. I think it would be a mistake for the board to micromanage all of these things. I think it would be much more efficient for us to kind of have a general position that, you know, we're going to have a facilities manager. We want the facility used for a lot of things over the course of the next year. And I think we have the opportunity to look at this again and say, hey, maybe we weren't managing the property as efficiently as we could have. Maybe we could have had the council meeting there this whole time. Maybe we could have had yoga classes there this whole time. Maybe we could have done, you know, many of these things while we were operating the school, and we didn't do it. And we could have, but now we have an opportunity to do that. And if we start school again, it doesn't mean we have to stop any of that. We can keep doing it. Maybe we can't do everything, but we can do a lot of it. So that's where I really have a hard time at the moment is what happens when there are competing interests, and how are we going to decide? Are we as a school board going to decide, or is that going to be an administrative staff decision on, if it's a decision between, there's an elder care group and an outdoor exercise class, who's going to decide which of those? I think it would be dumb for that to come to the board. And so I think it would be much more important for us to create a framework that we can put into effect tomorrow and get people using the facility right away, but have a framework for making these decisions. In my mind, if we can do all of these things on the list we have here, awesome. I don't think we can do all of them. But I think we should create a framework where we decide how those decisions are made. And I personally, if we're going to make all of these decisions, I think we're not allocating our time correctly.
So yeah, Thane, not to piggyback on what you're saying, we obviously do have a current facility use policy. We have a current facility use person who oversees the rental and the picking up of keys and ensuring that documents are properly submitted and insurance is there. So we're not asking the board to become involved in that very administrative task. I think you just nailed. But really, the purpose of this conversation is to get that framework again. The most pressing pressing decision, potentially given Jim's timeline, is the appetite to burden the property in such a substantial way, in June or July, or to maintain a little more flexibility, allow for further conversation in the community as to the types of purposes for the property. That's the largest impetus for this being on the agenda tonight, was that we've had a few groups come to us saying that they're very interested in some way significant use of the property, and so trying to gauge where the board is on some of those. I don't know if it's competing uses as far as what's come forward yet, but again, significant uses, significant time.
And what happens, I mean, there's custodial services if somebody's using the class or the hall.
Jane, can you speak up?
I'm sorry. I was asking about custodial services. So any of these things that happen, then the bathroom needs to be
I was just
clean.
thinking that.
So how does that happen? I mean, normally so if you rent Matila's auditorium, there's no fee for the auditorium, but there's a fee for the custodian. That's an hour's worth of labor or 2 hours or whatever. So that would have to happen up there for whoever was using the facility. So that's something, that we have to think about, and obviously continuing, I mean, even if nothing is going on, we have people that have to go up and make sure the sprinklers haven't busted, and that, after a rain or before a rain, make sure that things are cleared out. So we're having people on the property, but the more use it gets, the more attention we need to give it. I do think something you said actually made me think about that. I do feel a little bit like you're talking about choosing between a senior care and a yoga class. I feel a little bit like we're kind of, do we choose Rock Tree Sky? Do we choose the board, the council up there? I'm not really comfortable doing that without knowing what is the future. I mean, we have we have charter school ideas, we have Rock Tree Sky, we have reopening Summit, we have maybe just a whole community center like in Oakview. So I'm a little concerned. Well, I guess we're not making a full-time commitment. Well, we can't make a full-time commitment. So anybody who enters into any kind of agreement with us has to understand that could change next week. Are you willing to take that risk and walk in the door? But I think the optics are important too, to what we see as contributing to the community up there.
Yeah, that's why I do like the idea of having it fall under the auspices of facilities management for OUSD. I hadn't really, before I came here, I hadn't really thought about that particular thing, and I think the optics of that are best. I think Jim has expressed to me that he thought that the site could be used for a lot of things, including what he's doing. I asked the council by email, but I didn't get an answer, but I imagine that, or some of you were on an email thread. Like Carol, but I thought you were CC'd on it.
Can I clarify that thing?
Yeah.
When we look at the space, we're only talking about dedicated 2 rooms, kind of those 2 east rooms with the tall windows, as being dedicated. Like, I don't want to lock the door at the end of the day to protect equipment, but all the rest would remain open for evening and afternoon. You're talking about 3 rooms and apartment hall. So, I don't see a competition with Upper Ojai community, neighborhood community. I was hoping to work with them. It just, we went to the meeting, there really wasn't anything happening. It's gonna be a while until those voices come in, but I still think there's a lot of space.
And I didn't mean it in a negative way that I didn't hear back. I just didn't.
We just never saw it. We never saw it.
No, that's, maybe it was.
Carol went to Colorado.
Yeah, maybe it was just a Carol. I thought you were CC, but could be my mistake. I've been doing a lot of things.
I will tell you, I like, broadly speaking, I agree with you. We're not here to micromanage everything, but I think we are here to talk about the broad concepts. And And I am very much in favor of the space being, utilized a lot and in ways that are pretty consistent with how our other schools are used, but probably, hopefully more intensely. But I'll tell you, and I'm sorry, Jim, because I'm concerned that this license agreement is a way around something that we can't really do. If Jim's going to move equipment in, and that's a permanent taking of the space for some period of time, and for us to be like, hey, it's okay because we call it a license and not a lease, it feels a little cute, and I'm not sure that I feel okay about it. I feel like there's a statutory process that we have to be cognizant of. We're highly cognizant of it in this district. We've had a 7-Eleven committee before. We're in virgin territory, but it just feels to me like, it feels to me like if the spirit of the law is if you want to give over a space to somebody for some extended period of time for their exclusive use, then you have to do it through a certain process. And we're getting around it by saying, well, it's not really that because we can tell you to leave tomorrow. I don't know that I feel okay about it.
I just have to say, if a yoga class came in and left yoga mats and exercise balls, I wouldn't feel bad about that. So I wouldn't feel bad about Jim having equipment there. I think it really depends on the whole, again, going back to the framework, what does everybody need? If nobody else needs those 2 classrooms, then why aren't we using it for that? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But so you have a parent here, not to put you on the spot, I'm sorry, who's from Santa Paula, who's sending her child to San Antonio. So she's in the minority, and she's very concerned about childcare. So I understand this big discussion, and we have to have it about what we're going to do. But really, I think maybe I wasn't clear when I spoke. The things I'm looking for the district, or what the group is looking for the district, is childcare at Summit. Who's going to take possession of I don't know how many children you actually have, 5 kids that are riding the bus that could be in 1st, 2nd grade if their parent isn't there or they're late.
We could be it. We do it all day long with kids.
Well, that's fine. If they decide that's what I want to, then these are the things that current OHI district students need to know. So I just want to make sure that that's something that gets resolved.
So what happens to them now at Summit?
There's Connor Kids is there. At Summit, we have our own.
And so a parent pays for after school?
Yeah, they pay. It's run by the PTO. It's run at a small loss. We do fundraising to cover the expenses. That's how we do it.
But you're saying you want the district to do that now?
We need help for our Summit students. So I'm saying those 3 items: the computers, the English language, and the childcare. Those are the 3 things that we would need the school district to help us with, or at least tell us, like the insurance requirements. We would need your input. Yoga isn't exactly the top priority for next year. More is making sure that our current students who are rehomed have a good quality of life, that mom isn't stressed out that she's not going to get there 5 minutes late. Sorry to interrupt.
For sure, I know that my sister and I decided to put our kids in San Antonio because there was going to be an after school here in case we didn't get there exactly at 3:30 with the bus, right? When my son's only 6, he can't stay there if I'm not there. I don't know if we have
I think
it's got to be a childcare after at Summit School when the bus gets there or not.
I think it's. I don't know that the board can say this or the district, but I think it's worth looking into. Having the Condor Kids be at Summit like it has been. It's just where will we fundraise for it?
I don't know. That's
maybe we fundraise in the Valley. Maybe we fundraise, at every, at 4th of July, at Ojai Day, at all these sort of community events. You put something on a GoFundMe page.
I like the idea of it, like Jim just said, you do it for free.
I've got staff there. It'd be, once again, we live up there. The folks lost their school. If we're able to gain the use of a couple rooms. Even to be clear, if the district, felt like that was too much for me to move over some workbenches and such, I'd be glad to rent one room for some quiet direct instruction. It gets a little loud in the makerspace. Jane knows.
Well, let's not talk about renting rooms.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. License. No, but we'd be glad to. I already have staff on site till 4 o'clock, and it could be later. And we could work with you. Everybody's, I pick up the extra hour for staff member on the fee. It's fine. Probably not a big deal.
So, what would it take to do a 7-Eleven so that we aren't, kind of fudging this with a licensing agreement and lease the property for a year?
Would we have to surplus the property to do that?
Yes,
Yeah. But then you can take that surplusing back?
that's correct.
What's the process of taking it back?
Resolution.
Just a
I mean, it's the
simple
same thing we've talked
Same
about
thing
for
we've talked about
this.
this property.
Yeah.
So it's as easy to grant it as it is to take it back.
It is.
So we would just need to pull together in the next month a 7-Eleven committee. Is there a limited number of meetings they have to have? I feel like it has been, we just had a 7-Eleven committee. And so the breadth of knowledge and the research is there already at fingertips. What does it really look like to do a 7-Eleven?
Typical 7-Eleven committee is 3 to 4 meetings. We had an exceptional one that Marianne and I both were a part of 2 years ago, where I think we're up to 14. Is that how many we did?
Well, I'd like to say something though. Is it
Let him finish.
I'll finish first.
Let him finish.
So 3 to 4 meetings, very common when you actually have a property that already is no longer being used. So that's, again, when we look at More Parking Unified being the most recent example, they assembled a 7-Eleven committee to look at their former alternative high school space. They met 3 times. They agreed to a long-term lease with VCOE at $1, so it wasn't a highest and best use focus on revenue. They were focused on bringing educational programs to East County for career technical ed. So it very much can be done in a short period. However, I don't have certainty not sure I have confidence, much less certainty, that this will be one that can be done that quickly. I think that there is a lot of community sentiment about different potential uses, and so during the summer to try to have confidence that we could bring together a committee that again has to have at least 7 members. There are restrictions around the makeup of that committee to then be able to try to bring them together on multiple occasions to ultimately make a recommendation to the board. The board then has to receive that recommendation. You have your own deliberation.
Have a public hearing.
Exactly.
And having staff in July provide them with information when people are on vacation.
Right.
How long I thought the 7-Eleven committee's decisions are good for a certain length of time.
There's no statutory period of time that they're good for. They're good for so long as there's not been a significant or substantive change to what would have been part of their analysis.
So this is a significant change.
That's why the recommendation for this property still stands for 414 East Ojai Avenue. But for Summit, I do believe that it'd be interpreted that a very significant change has occurred. School being closed, as well as the enrollment of what we had up there prior to the closure. I think we really would need to bring together a new committee.
What would go into the discussion there? If the question is this surplus? What is that 3 to 4 meeting discussion?
So first, there are certain things they're looking at. Again, in the case of a vacant property, it's a little easier when you're looking at enrollment at the site. But ultimately, what it really focuses around then would be what their recommendation to the board would be as far as the use of the property. So they can hold public hearing, hold meetings, talk about what the needs are of the community, what the potential use could be, whether or not it should be a lease or a sale, whether or not we should be pursuing highest and best use or something else that supports the community. And so there can be a period of time discussing that. But the first thing they do is really be looking at, and then also the recommendation could be, again, saying that this is a unique recommendation based on this upcoming 12-month period. And so we would recommend the surplusing would be, for a time certain and not indefinitely, if the school opened back up.
Maybe we have to, but I really don't like the optics of surplusing the property. I mean, we voted to surplus this property, and every single meeting we had, I know I did, I made a long explanation. This doesn't mean that we don't want the property. It means that We're just looking at options. It didn't matter how many hundreds of times I said that. Everybody in the community said, oh, the property surplus, you're getting rid of it. It made no difference what I said. And so I don't want that to be the sentiment in Upper Ojai, that we're getting rid of the property.
Mary Ann, go ahead.
I'd just like to state that we did convene our 7-Eleven committee again in February of this year. And I don't know that we have been officially dissolved, so I believe there is a 7-Eleven committee. We have to look and see if it was dissolved. I don't believe it was. We have the reporting from the last minute, from the last meeting, and there was some ongoing discussion that we might meet again because of what's happening with this facility. And then the second issue is, it's the intent of the legislature. If you read that education code, you don't have to have a 7-Eleven committee to close a school, but it's recommended. There's that part. But then the second part is you shall have a 7-Eleven committee to determine the use of surplus property. So you're not automatically surplusing the property. I understand that's your intent in reconvening it to discuss Summit, but it's also a function that I wish had happened prior to closing Summit for the year, that we have that process, because I think the process has not worked out very well in terms of considering all the alternatives. And I'll throw out something just pie in the sky. One of the alternatives is looking at ways to bolster a Summit school, whether it was a couple of grades or one grade or a preschool, for the 2018-19 school year. And that's revenue for the district, and that's students coming in future years, and also funneling into the other schools.
Okay, Jane.
So I would like to focus in on finishing this item. So we've been on it for an hour. So what are we trying to accomplish? What would you like to hear? Do we need to make a statement? Have we given you enough information, Andy, that you know what you're looking for now? I think we could just continue talking forever, but I feel like let's focus this in. The board is asked to receive information and provide direction to the district staff. So I think our direction so far, from what I've been hearing, is, let's look into those specific things. The library and the computer lab, finding funding maybe through OEF or VCOE, daycare after school. So maybe that, I don't know. Let's begin that process. And then the third thing was, English language learners. So that those three things. And then as we that doesn't really, obviously we've also all discussed that we like the idea of the facility being available for people who want to use it just like they use Matilaha. So the big decision, and I don't know if we're ready to make it tonight, would be, are we willing to do something more long-term for Jim?
So my added request would be, I need some legal context. I think we should, because I just don't feel comfortable with this license idea without somebody saying that's been done and that's an appropriate thing to do.
The commentary you have before you was a copy paste from our attorney. Something that's been done throughout the state. It's something that he said is common.
And what if we started out along the licensing agreement road with the intent of convening a 7-Eleven for the duration of the school year, so that we can move?
So my overall feeling is that we want to fully utilize this during the period when we are fully exploring the possibilities for Summit School as part of the Ojai Unified School District. So I don't have a lot of interest in going through a whole lot of effort to determine for a small period of time that it's a surplus. I don't think it's like, we don't know whether it's surplus or not. It feels to me like just a formality that's not, doesn't really get us anywhere. I just want reassurance that if we were to, let Jim use it during the day, to me that's really a kind of continuation of how it's being used now, but hopefully more so. During the day, there's some school going on there, and then afterwards, there's all the things that can go on. There's open, as Jane listed the stuff. I think all that, to the extent we can help fundraise or otherwise, that there's a community asset up there that's interested in doing all that, which exists at our other communities, then that would be awesome.
So I got two questions. One relates to, I think, something Kevin asked earlier. What does it cost us just sitting there? What's it going to cost us to carry that property this year if we do nothing? And then the second question is on the license. It's a terminable at will.
That's right.
But does it negate it being a license if you agree to a notice period determination?
I'll have to find that out. I don't know.
Okay.
With regard to your question of the cost to keep the school, or just the holding cost for this coming year, do we have a meter fee up there? Is it the same as like the $1,000 that we have at Matilaha?
About $1,000, $24.
Okay.
So it's 4-inch line.
Okay. So utilities, if we're not using the utilities, there are certain very small just meter fees of having the property. We certainly would be sending staff up there on a periodic basis to check on it and to maintain it. But I think that we could easily be looking at, as far as true cost, very minimal. I mean, $1,000 to $3,000. As far as labor of current staff who would go up there occasionally, we're still talking about minimal hours. So the keeping the school there for this coming year, very, very low cost.
Is there, I hate to put this out there, but I did hear this from somebody. Is there a sense that allowing Rock Tree Sky to be there is sort of competition for our school? I know it's a very different, parents who are choosing that are pretty much homeschooling their kids. It's not the same as a charter school where kids go every day in LA. I don't think Ventura County has a charter school that's an everyday attending on a site. Do they?
They have one room. Yeah, but everyday Camarillo does.
I can't think of one off the top of my head that.
Cape and Camarillo, sponsored by Oxnard, I think.
I don't know of anyone that may be one. I can't recall if they're a true 5-day, full-day classroom-based program.
Yes, they are.
Okay. I don't know.
Just throwing that out there.
Do you have a feeling about that?
I feel a little weird about it because I'm not a charter advocate. I think the problems I've seen, I haven't seen every charter, but it really is an individually paced, it doesn't work for every child to go to be in independent programs.
Sorry.
And I also know that I feel like some of the, in Valley Oak, some of the curriculum that parents are choosing and that they're saying, sure, you can teach your child that curriculum. I don't think it's preparing their child for the future. So what I've seen of charters has not been, I think, a quality education. So I'm not a person who says I think more charters in Ojai are better. I don't know that parents who are making the decision have been through. We have a doctor here. We have people with certificated staff who have really gone to obtain knowledge that parents don't have. They don't have the knowledge that she has in terms of education. So I do have a problem with just saying, the more the merrier in our school district. And so there's an optic there that bothers me, doesn't bother me, it concerns me, it makes me think. I'm not saying I can't go beyond that. It's just a thought that I thought maybe we should.
Can I ask a question? The after school program, before school program that happens behind TOPA, is that privately funded? Or
That's CDR. Yeah, that's a totally different entity. We just are in a long-term ground lease with them on that. That's their buildings even.
Okay, just curious.
So I'm glad you brought it up because I kept looking for my entryway because I felt like I needed to, in our desire for transparency on the board, let everybody know that I do have a son that attends Rock Tree Sky. So while I don't necessarily think it compromises my decision-making ability, I think it needs to be known that I do. And my response to that, Jane, is your concern. I guess when I look at all of these community outreach ideas, I see us allowing the space to be used for these things. Are you concerned that are allowing Rock Tree Sky to potentially use that facility as an endorsement of charter schools? Because I'm not sure I see it that way.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't, I wouldn't want let's go to the extreme, right? I wouldn't want the facility open for rental by the KKK. They're not anything like that, but I'm saying, people would say, oh, you're endorsing them, right? So how is it different if we put a charter school in to say we're not endorsing them, we're just allowing them to use the facility? Though I guess when there's a law, we have to do, like with religion, we have no right to deny religious groups use of our facilities any more than, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. So maybe you're right. Maybe that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying I can't go beyond this thought. It's a thought, and that I know like how. So how does it make our teachers feel? I'm sorry, Angie's not here to think that we would have an alternative school on Summit's property.
So I mean, I will say broadly speaking, I think just like with transparency. That is my sense, my feeling about that, and I think it's certainly part of it, Jane. I mean, it's of course a part of the discussion that it's a different school than our school district. But it feels to me like, and it's the same answer I would have on charters, is we have to never. I feel like I don't want to ever put my finger on the scale. I feel like people, for the most part, should be allowed to pursue whatever they think is the best education for their child. And if it turns out that more people want to pursue education in a different arena than we're offering in the public school district that I'm helping run, then we will try to do better in terms of attracting people to what we're doing. But it would seem almost an impossible task to say if is my decision potentially helping an alternative school, because at the end of the day it would be there are just so many permutations of that it would be impossible to be consistent about it. I think it would just be impossible to be consistent. There would be where somebody's using it in one way after school and that person is a advocate of this or that. I feel like for the most part, we should try and utilize this space in ways that are productive to the community up in the Upper Ojai, as well as monetize it if we can. My bigger concern about the school there is just that I don't optically. I worry about seeming like we're end running a process that is supposed to occur. And I don't really have a great end run a process that's supposed to. I don't have a great solution for it because I certainly don't feel like going through. I feel like our efforts should be focused for the most part on deciding the true future of Summit with real effort put into the possibilities and working with the people up there that might be the drivers of it. I feel like there has to be drivers right now for what's going to happen after school in the afternoon.
That's why I'm saying that
there must be drivers.
Losing more students that are going to San Antonio if you don't have that school care.
Yeah, but there are going to have to be drivers that are not the school board doing that. I mean, that's the reality.
Right.
So anyway,
and let me just throw in there. You have a driver in Jim. I mean, you're
True facts.
You're a great member of your community up there, and I just wanted to get that thought out there. I don't have anything again. I went and saw it, and I was impressed. And So, yeah, and I think it's important that whatever decision we make is supported by the community as a whole.
I have to say, while I don't feel the same way you do, Jane, I think it's worth the conversation, because there was a school district that got in trouble for teaching the kids the wrong kind of yoga.
Right.
Which
Wasn't
sounds
that our
crazy,
former
but they did.
superintendent,
Our former
actually?
superintendent. Yeah.
In San Diego, yeah. Yeah.
And because there were some religious implications of
That's
the So I think we should be transparent. I think we should have the conversation, but I also don't think we should be ridiculous. Yeah. Not that you
But
are.
that
I'm
was
just
the school
talking about the
district.
other.
Like I said, I don't have a district teaching the yoga, so I don't know that that's
No, I know.
necessarily comparable.
You never know what people are going to get upset about. That's my
Okay.
point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, so I am, in the spirit of Jane's comments, bringing this to a head. So I think what we have here are we have effectively the idea of some after-school care and some other opportunities that would be pretty consistent with life is if Summit were still going on as a regular school, but maybe some added intensity, such as more days or including parents or including adults in the use of the computers and stuff. I mean, you've heard all these comments. We just need to have some kind of a regulatory context for it. We're meeting again in August. August 14th is our next meeting. Are you interested in, would we not be wasting Rock Tree Sky's time if there were to be discussions about formalizing what that relationship would look like?
Well, I kind of feel like about this property like I felt about this property. Right? Everybody's got ideas, but I haven't seen a formal proposal from anybody.
Right. So
if we saw formal proposals in August, then I'd be willing to talk about it. But until somebody steps up and says, I want to do this and I'm making that commitment.
Yeah, I think that's pretty formal.
It's a letter. But then there's a lot of detail not in it. Right? And so if we're going to make a decision, there's a lot of detail that needs to be in.
And to be clear, tonight's not an action item. There's no action to be on the table. I mean, there was never any intention that this was going to be an action item. So.
But don't you think that when Andy asks for direction, that our direction should be either, and continue to talk to Rock Tree Sky?
Yeah, I'm saying, are we of the mind that would be a good continuing conversation and formalize something there? Or are we saying, are any of us feeling like that's just a non-starter? That's kind of where I'm coming from.
I'm all for continuing the conversation. I think the council, I think we need to be talking to the council. I think we need to be talking to Jim, and I think we need to make sure that the students that we service, that we're providing the services that they need.
Now, for something like the council, my sense is that we wouldn't need a formal agreement. It would be similar to the kinds of opening of facilities that we have. We don't enter into a written contract with a Brownie troop that we say can use the. Or
we have a facility use agreement. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have we should circulate the facility use agreement to the
Which
council.
the 4-H already has filled out.
Yeah.
And CISR water and
And I think the point there would be, it would make sense to me if there's going to be, I forgot what all the activities were, but if there are a whole bunch of ancillary activities that relate to the community that would require insurance, maybe the council is a better entity to do that than Rock Tree Sky.
It's really unfortunate that the PTO is dissolved because there's a great umbrella insurance available to PTOs and PTAs.
Well, we still have the insurance, and we might be able to keep using it if we're able to just morph the nonprofit.
Maybe it could be reorganized.
You guys know Upper Ohio Relief is a nonprofit. Right. Exists. We use the facility and we are insured.
Yeah.
Currently using the facility, which hasn't been talked about by some.
Can you put other things?
And funding. So there's all different kind of.
Have you guys done a formal facility use agreement, or you just You're. And it's always the lawyers. We're always the guys that sign everything without reading it.
Can we go off the record for 30 seconds?
So I mean, is that direct? Is that sufficient direction?
That's sufficient direction.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for coming and for participating in this, and for all your good faith and all your hard work in your community. All the people that are here, we know you are really have the best interest in mind, and we're all doing our best.
Add one more thing to this. As this discussion, as we've said, we want to see this discussion continue. I don't want to leave both Rocktree Sky and parents waiting till the last minute to know what the final decision is. And I'm not suggesting we make a final decision, but I would like some way of keeping people informed about where we are in the process, what the thinking is, have people put forth proposals that are more substantial. I just don't want to leave everybody.
Can I say something really quickly? I think, hearing everything, I think there's a path together forward on all of us submitting a joint proposal. I don't see why that can't be done. And then that solves, there's competing interests, true, but if we all sit down together, the competing interests up there, you included, Maria, we, I think, can come together and submit some type of proposal to the board, say, look, this is how we can all use the property together.
Which is why we formed the council in the first place, was to bring all these individual voices together as one big voice as a whole for the community.
That may be broadly true, but I still think we're going to need, like, if we were to do anything particular with, there certainly with Jim, we would have to have some particular, agreement. I would think that would be different from something you guys. I think you guys really don't need anything other than a facility use agreement.
Although there are a lot of different.
But the
interests that want to use the process.
So we should.
But going back to Ms. Griffin's point real quickly, we're constantly getting probably a tenth of what you guys get. But what's going on with Summit? What's going on with Summit? What's the timeline? What's the board going to do? So, echoing what you said, I think, and I know Mr. Bailey has an interest that needs to be addressed. It would be awesome if you guys can say we're meeting in August and. Is really good at it. I think let's make this decision. You are. So I'm ready to put you on the spot. But you really put support. You guys make decisions like you did last time. You guys can meet in August and say, all right, the decision's going to be made. Some feelings are going to be heard, but it's going to be so there's.
Well, that's look. Don't get us wrong. We have there's a formal process that you may not be aware of, where we have action items and discussion items, and we always have a discussion item before we typically, big issues before we do an action item. Tonight, we can never turn this into an action item because we don't have agreements in front of us to act upon. So, on August 14th, we'll make decisions.
So one last question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we've talked about a master kind of thing, but is it feasible to segment like what Kevin is talking about? So to have potentially a couple of entities using various parts.
Absolutely. In fact, that's really the preferred way in which you avoid having it look like it is a single lease, year-long lease with a single party.
So second question, I lied. The license, what's the actual structure of that? Is that a facilities use agreement, or is that something different?
It is a facility use agreement. It's not the one that we typically use. It would be unique language to make clear what the rights of each party are.
Not a lease.
Correct.
Has to do with the fee simple, I believe. The whether you're actually providing possessory. You're not giving them a possessory interest.
That's right, and that's why I'm asking, right? Because if it's a use agreement, then there's no question, right, that it is not. There's no proprietary interest.
Right.
To address because I don't want to finesse stuff, right?
Right. No, I totally agree. I want whatever we do has to be blessed and legitimate and
clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Got it.
Cool.
We're going to get boring now, so we're going to move on.
Oh, they all leave now.
So, next item. We're going into 747, the Measure J report.
It's all done?
Is it David?
Yeah, David, it's on you now.
Thank you for your time.
All right, thanks for coming.
Good evening. So, do you want me to read off the list? Do you want to go line by line with me?
Definitely don't want to go line by line.
Okay.
Can you just give us a
I'll
summary?
give you a high level.
Yeah.
High level of what I've written here. So we have our roofing projects started. All of them are in progress. So we are doing tear-offs currently at most of our sites. Nordoff is the next one that will start. That's July 2nd. Once tear-offs is finished, we have our HVAC coming on, which is through Climatech. And so they're placing units and finishing what we call the curb, which is all of the area around the AC unit will be sealed, and then we'll put the new roof on top once they're done. So once we have curb details for each one, they come in, and then we're going to actually found out this sealant that we're using is a cold sealant, which is kind of exciting to me. They put down a layer, and then it's a cold layer, so there's no tar pits, kettles, that noxious smell you get from typical roof construction. We'll have zero of that. It'll smell like maybe somebody's spray painting something in the neighborhood. So I thought that was kind of cool to share. Climatech, so we have completed Topa Topa and Matilaha. We are still working at Nordoff on thermostats. So we went with the Ecobee thermostat. It's really great. I'm actually able to now monitor all the AC units we currently have at my desk. I can see the room temperatures, trends. I can change things if I like. So it's kind of neat in that way.
So be nice to David.
Yes. Well,
It's getting hot.
Topa Topa had a couple of things that last week, so I actually dialed their AC down really early in the morning to make sure that room was cool for their events. And then once you got all the mass in there, the thermal mass, it did rise steadily. But we offset it, so I made sure to super cool it, and it worked out really well. So door sensors are beginning progress at Topa and Matilaha. Actually, I think is almost done today at Topa. And then the lighting project also installed occupancy sensors. So door and occupancy sensors are now going to be at Topa Topa, Matilaha, and Nordoff sites respectively.
So what is, tell us what that is.
So a door sensor and an aux sensor, occupancy. Your door sensor, if that door is open like that, it will shut off after about 5 minutes. And we're actually setting them, we had to customize it a little bit so that they take into account the lock block, because other districts don't utilize a lock block. And those are the sort of things where when you stumble across them, you really kick yourself, like I should have thought of that. But walking the site and doing the test room, we realized, okay, well this offset is about 1 inch, so that it was seeing that the door was open because the lock block was on. So we have accounted for that. And then occupancy sensors are about a half an hour, so it'll still cool the room into that area, and so when you come back in the room, then it will recool. And the Ecobee also, since it starts to learn patterns, so over time it won't, like if it shuts off in between when you have a prep period, for example, over time it won't allow the room to heat up as much. It'll learn that you're going to be back at 105 for your 6th period, and so it kind of will learn that, which is really cool. Which of course we can always go in and delete its history and reteach it to new schedules and new things, which they recommend every year. So that's something I have to do in summer right now. LED replacements are done. We have an emergency roof repair at San Antonio, so I've awarded L&L Roofing that, so we should begin mid-July right after summer school is out. So that's going to be kind of exciting. We have security camera projects, so my computer techs and basically the whole tech team are focusing on network upgrades and security cameras this summer. So they're running around and developing all these systems. So far, so good. We have them already installed at 2 other sites, and we really like the software. So we're just repeating what we already like. And so eventually we'll have a very symbiotic setup where we've usually had kind of daisy-chained, disparate. This one runs Axis, this one runs another Vigilon software, and they never talk. So principals are able to pull up their phone, pull up an event, and play back 15 seconds ago if they want in some hallway. So I think it'll be really good for Nordoff especially. That's how they utilize it a lot.
Do they already have cameras at Nordoff, or is it?
They did. Yes. So they had those cameras when I first started 12 years ago.
Okay.
And we had, I think, 35, and we've got about 19 left. I've tried to slowly work on them over the years and keep them running, but the server has given up, and it's really not cost effective. It's actually, I think it's called ONSSI. They're out of business; they don't exist, and so they've been taken over by someone else. It's quite a mess.
So the cameras are viewed in real time, right? Not
So they're
minute delays.
They're reviewed in real time, and then you can go back through your timeline and watch, 15 minutes ago, 6 days ago, whatever you'd like. And we're actually leveraging our unlimited storage in Google, so we have an archive. So all cameras, even though the NVR, the network video recorder, is a 15-day shift, we actually have all of our data from ever in Google, which is kind of cool. We'll see if they eventually call us about that one. I doubt it though.
So just to interrupt, the security cameras, this is the first time that you guys are seeing this as an item. It was on the bond plan that we presented to you back in the fall. Yet again, a positive note, as we experienced also with the roofing. Recall roofing came in about $400,000 below the budget that we had for that item. What we were able to do, and this is to David's credit, is some of his creativity and intelligence as to what we actually need. When Ron was working with R&T, our architects, to develop the scope of the very rough scope and a cost estimate for the security cameras, they were looking at something in the neighborhood of $250,000 for full wiring and everything at each individual site. Obviously, if the price was anywhere near that, we would have been bringing it to you throughout the past few months. What David was able to do is we're looking at the total cost of this project across all 5 sites, somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000.
36,000, and then the two help, which would be about 10,000.
So we're looking at something literally in the magnitude of about 90% less than what we had slated into our budget for that bond plan. So that is, we'll be bringing back to you once Greg is really up and running in the next few months some revisions to our bond plan, because we are actually looking at dollars being able to go a little further than we were thinking.
So that'll be money for a pool.
I was waiting for that to come. I knew it would.
So how were these school sites chosen? Because not all the schools are on there.
The school sites were chosen through. Miramonte has a very motivated staff. They're really on top of discipline, and this has aided Catherine, so she already has an existing camera system. She's supplementing that, so that was her choice, essentially. Matilaha, we really want to make sure we're monitoring ingress-egress, and they've had some issue in the past of maybe people who came on campus who shouldn't have been there that day. So we really did a bare-bones system that allows you to see every ingress-egress point of the site. Nordhoff, again, discipline is really number 1, and security is number 2, I think. Is they use it almost daily to make sure people are where they're supposed to be, or this person said this about me, well, that's weird because you guys never even crossed in the hallway. That sort of thing happens. So then Miners Oaks has historically been an issue with graffiti tagging, that sort of thing. I don't know why. I think they even have fences, so it just seems odd, but the one site we have with the greatest fences seems to get jumped the most. So I don't know what that's about. And then Summit to monitor the site. I really think it'll be helpful to make sure that we have some eyes in the sky when we're not able to be there every single week or every single day. So
Summit was added after the June 6th decision to make sure that we had that visibility again throughout. Nordhoff and Matilaha, that also, their identification really came as part of that walkthrough call a few months ago when Chief Freihoff and then the principals, Dave and I, walked the sites. That was where Freihoff really encouraged us to focus energy and money when it came to securing our campuses. He realized that, again, $10 million worth of fencing still wouldn't be that effective and was certainly not was not possible. But really improving the visibility we have across the campuses was what they thought would be, again, an important step in overall campus security. Absolutely. And then, as David said, Miramonte also is a site that we've had actually a couple break-ins, if you remember, in nutrition services, as well as some graffiti that took place on recently. That site, just in the past 2 months or so. So those are factors.
Absolutely, and there is some
great sign at Topa that just says they're being videotaped.
Right.
That's very helpful.
Seems to have helped a lot, but
I don't think the ones who are breaking in are watching.
Maybe not. Yeah. And so as well with Matilla, I built in some redundancy. I built a little bit bigger server for that one because I do have a feeling long term we'll want some more visibility. But I'm really a fan of iterative design, and so you put something in place and you see how it works, just like at Miramonte, and then we go from there. So build and adapt. The network project, actually, Greg was floored when I told him how good our network is considering everything that the challenges we usually have, and he was just dumbfounded that we could do this level of project with that little amount of money. And it really just speaks to the expertise that I have in my technology team, that they're just on top of everything when it comes to our infrastructure, network closets. And I showed him some of our nightmare pictures from past and present, and it's just amazing to see the difference. So this will be, there are 3 phases to this network project. So next summer will be phase 3, and then we will have rolled over our entire network, switches, access points, uplinks, everything. So very cool. Got a drainage repair at Miramonte. Sure you guys have heard at least something on Facebook about Catherine. Yeah, Catherine bringing in the volunteers and grabbing one of the maintenance guys and really doing a lot of effort to keep, during that rainstorm, to keep her site clean. And so we are going to put some effort into drainage at Miramonte this summer. And also working diligently to get the painting off the ground. There is some ACM removal that is kind of impeding that project, but Greg, he is just a wealth of knowledge. I can't express how great it is to have him on board and to have his professionalism and experience just to be a sounding board. I really think we're going to be able to get Miramonte painted this summer and the ACM taking care of everything. And I wasn't that energetic about it 2 days ago, so I'm excited about that. And he's also working with me on the blinds project. We're getting that spec'd out currently.
Remind me what ACM is.
Thank you, I was going to ask that too.
It's our euphemism for asbestos.
Yes. Yeah. ACM is containing material, containing material. I don't even like to say the word, so.
That which cannot be.
Yes, Voldemort containing material. So, yeah, we got our blinds project and our library project. We got great feedback from DSA on our library project. All of the review was fantastic.
Great.
And there is potential that we would be bidding and starting construction in October. So I'm meeting them tomorrow morning at 7:30 to go over the ground and the irrigation and get that back to DSA for final review. So
thanks, dude.
So recall with library, the timeline we showed you when we had R&T Com was October construction start date. So we're still, looking like we're potentially on track. There is obviously a possibility that, before DSA finalize everything, we have a small delay, but still on track. The end date of full closeout was June, but actually construction really was looking to end in March. And so even if we do end up having a couple week delay, and if we aren't able to start till November, we still have plenty of a buffer that's going to be fully complete before the following school year. So we knew all along that this coming school year, we are going to have the library under construction for a significant portion. But that's what we're working through.
Yeah, and I've met with Dave and Denise, the librarian at Nordoff, if you're not aware, and they're going to try to start the school year with the library intact, and instead of moving it this summer, because they just felt like it would be nice to keep some semblance of normalcy through as far as we can. Because there is a potential, if the bids come in high and we have to rebid, that sort of thing, they're thinking as they'll be the last hour, the 25th hour move, and Denise has already signed up for that, so she's highly motivated. And
if we did it in October, it wouldn't be dangerous for the student body to have the construction going on?
Not on the library. The library really should be pretty self-contained.
There's really minimal work on the roof. The majority of it is, we're keeping the envelope for the most part. It's completely redoing the inside, moving walls, everything else, but it really is something that we'll be able to have, standalone.
Great. Yeah, I'm pretty confident about that. And the one electrical leg, there is an electrical leg that we're going to have to be trenching, but again, it's well away from any normal student activities, and so even that I think will be fine.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. You're
welcome. Any questions, anyone? Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thanks, David.
Moving on to our second reading and approval of our policies. So before we get to October, we do have the second reading of the March and May. Does anyone have anything?
So let me go ahead and respond to the questions that we had come up from last meeting. Recall on page 148, there was a question about whether or not if there's a shell there, whether complaints are actually going through the UCP process. The answer is yes. That is what we're actually currently doing. So there's no, although it's new language, the process by which we'd be doing it anyway is through UCP. Next comment was on page 192. It was with regard to whether or not within 10 days of negative balance in meal account. We currently are doing it twice a month, and that's by hard copy. We're going to begin emailing, and so Julie actually believes she's already meeting the requirement of 10 days, but that's actually going to be very easy to do electronically, even more frequently as appropriate. So that one we thought given their recommendation to keep it 10 days, that it was fine because we already meet it.
I was looking for it to be longer.
Yeah, we were feeling like we didn't want to
10
barrage
days seemed
parents.
too often, and like I didn't want her to have to do it that often.
Oh, I understand, but what I'm saying is she's already doing it that often.
Oh, okay.
And it is that's industry norm within school nutrition.
Alright.
So while this is a new thing that's going to be identified in the parental notifications, the parent rights book, it is something that has already been a standing practice.
And then you say, and she likes it. She does it more often, and she really likes it. Don't take it away from her.
That's right. There was a question that came up with regard to, I think this brings us to the immigration policies. So, two things that we wanted to update there. Two things for me to update you on. One is a change, and the other is just to answer the question. The change is on page 283. Current policy that we have with regard to visitors, recall that was a question you guys had at last meeting, was
Name, address, occupation.
so we actually currently have nearly the same language because it's actually Penal Code 627.3 that this draws upon. For some reason, their recommendation from CSBA excluded a upon request provision within the statement of each visitor or outsider shall provide to the principal. Our current policy says upon request, and so it's my recommendation that we reinsert that language, and so we don't have to actually worry about this burden when it comes to every PTA parent who's coming on to a site, but that we have the authority to request that they provide that information if it if it was a visitor who we didn't know and who we questioned their purpose.
That makes sense.
So again, just to be sure we're on the same page, it's the second sentence of page 283. Each visitor or outsider shall, and then this is the new addition, upon request, provide the principal or designee with his or her name, address, occupation, age of less than 21, etc.
Great.
And then we had a question about the birth certificates as well as the whether or not we currently have to identify birthplace. We have fully scrubbed all of our data of birth certificate. We fully scrubbed our data on citizenship. So we don't have information about a current student's citizenship status. However, we did confirm, I think, Shelley, it was you who maybe recalled, that the state is still requiring that we maintain the data on place of birth and have to report that up to the state. And so that is something that we haven't been able to exclude.
I thought we thought it was federal, but it turns out
it turns out it's state. Exactly. That was something that I get
so weird that California of all
exactly.
Well, we should write our legislators.
Yeah,
there we go.
Gavin will help us out, or I'm sorry, Mr. Cox.
So those were the updates that we had for you. Again, only one actual language update, and that was just to provide you a response to some of the other questions.
Does anyone have anything further?
I have a question still about
suicide policy.
Suicide policy for the charter school. Is that under our policy?
What's that?
Do they have to follow our policy? Or I think that was my question.
So what they do in all cases is when they don't have a policy that specifically discusses the issue, they have an overarching policy that says that they will follow whatever the district's policy is on the matter. They don't currently have a separate suicide policy, so they follow ours.
And so with that, does that mean, because we heard the whole spiel from Janine about how many counselors and how they handle it all. Does the charter school have access to our counselors if they were having an
If they had an issue, absolutely, Janine would be over there first thing.
And at their last charter meeting, we talked about inviting their staff to our staff trainings for the awareness talks and how to be aware and look for it. Signs.
Thanks.
So I move to approve the March 2018 and May 2018 board policy changes with the upon request added in there.
Were there any other modifications we made?
No.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, we're to the first reading of the October 2017 CSBA recommended board policies. Today, for information only. Shall we begin?
Page 9.
Start at the very beginning.
Yeah. Actually, just a question. Are these comprehensive plans different from the LCAP or different from our school site things? I mean, it says, it's all this says new. So I'm like, it says LCAP in there. So
Yeah, it references it.
It's not something, it's not adding something. It's something we're already doing. It's just the wording that's new.
It's new wording, and it's stating that other plans required by law were determined by the board to be in the best interest of the district. So, as you saw from Maryland, there are things that go beyond the LCAP, but we're doing anything that's required by law, and at this time, there's nothing additionally that you guys required. But
yeah. I should have asked David before he left. Page 29.
I have 14. I just wanted to make sure that we have a English Learner Parent Advisory Committee. Do we? I mean, I know we have COPA, but we have
Every school site has an ELAC committee.
So we already have this in place. Okay.
On the bottom of 29, it says the district's design for its website shall be available for people with disabilities. I mean, what are they saying? You have to have the audio, you have to have the Braille. I mean,
no, the biggest ADA compliancy issue is properly saving file names and saving pictures. So if someone is visually impaired, if they have the ability to hover over a particular part of the page, that their own software, which will identify what, it will read whatever the information is there. And so there's software that for, again, visually impaired people, it says if the file was named, picture of students in the, meadow versus image 09876. So the idea is that we need to make sure, and David's aware of that, and we're working on gaining compliance on properly identifying the file names, that sort of stuff for those who are trying to access it.
I had a question on 30 regarding advertising on the website. I don't necessarily have a position one way or the other, but do we have any advertising?
Not to my knowledge. No.
And does anybody, I'm just wondering if anybody...
Are you saying, do we have advertising on the website? The answer is no on the website.
I mean, I know we
do the banners, exactly, yeah.
Right. And I'm just, I don't know what kind of revenue we could earn on the website if the board has a position one way or the other. I would be okay with it.
I would find it really cheesy.
I would be okay with it.
More cheesy than the football field or the gym?
Well,
I don't know, yeah. I've never seen, I go to other school district websites periodically, and I've never seen one with banner ads.
I haven't either.
I think it would diminish us, but I'm just one vote. Maybe we'll tell the people we go 4-1 on that one.
So well, we're on page 30. The superintendent or designee shall develop content guidelines for district and school websites and assign staff to review and approve content prior to posting. I mean, I know we've got teachers with their own pages. I mean, we've got music and science, so is this new thing that we're gonna?
That's one that I'll hear from David on. Right now, there's no question that the main school pages and district page, there is review that's being formally done by either Kathy or myself, Dave, or a principal. But you're right, I did not necessarily go down to the detail of each individual class page and those sorts of things, which I am confident
Well, and they're
were-
not. I mean, I don't know if those are. Well, it says school.
Yeah, I don't think that's a school website.
Yeah.
It's a teacher specific.
But that would come back to us if there was something on a teacher's website that was inappropriate.
Yeah. Well, it would, but I mean, within reason, you have teachers that post things for their students, and if they, I mean, I'm not sure that's any different than anything else really bizarre that a teacher could do. I'm not sure how we could police it. I mean, it's not particularly different
than. It might be a good thing to have an idea what the teacher's doing in the classroom.
With our multiple staff that we have time to read and all that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do have a question about this web content though, because I've noticed a number of teachers now starting their own Indiegogo or the other one, the nonprofit one for schools, which I can't remember the name of now.
Yeah.
For various projects and things. Is that overseen by the district, or is that just done sort of ad hoc?
And I'm not sure. I don't know what Indiegogo
So they go
is. That like
right,
crowdfunding?
they
Okay,
crowdfund.
crowdfunding. No, crowdfunding. That's something that I would very much like to put our arms around a little more because because right now anything that Nordoff is doing with GoFundMe typically goes through Bronwyn, and Bronwyn directs everything to me. But I am frequently walking into a classroom and surprised to learn what a GoFundMe account. Donors Choose. Yeah, what a crowdfunding source has funded for a particular classroom or school site.
Most of them seem to be good efforts, and I haven't seen anything scary that anybody's written.
Right, but no, it's completely Wild West.
Yeah, okay.
And do these policies, the web content, extend to Facebook? I know when we were talking about the new Apogee software potential, that would all be linked with Facebook. But this doesn't cover that, does it?
That's right.
Okay. And just on websites in general, how often do they get checked? And is there a schedule for overseeing that? And how often are they updated?
So that was something that we had Linda Jordan very involved in about 2 years ago, was creating a full, what's the term? Well, forgetting the proper term, but I'll just say a chart that has every single page.
Matrix?
And I think Matrix may have been what I was looking for. That says when it should be updated, what time of the year, and by whom. And so David Rogers did training with all the site staff, and he still monitors that to make sure that things that need updating, that we're not having, documents that say welcome back to the 2014-15 school year, that sort of thing. So we do have actually a formal process in place, and that, to the credit of Linda Jordan, really helped us.
Well, I can tell you, Topaz needs updating because I went to find somebody's phone extension number, one of the teachers, and it still has Ann Guards on there. She hasn't been there all year. It does have Dawn as the principal. I was happy, but the teacher list is.
Who's Tim Baird? Because he's listening.
He's the.
Well, so as a matter of fact, because this is one of the things that I have an issue with our current website, is the school calendar. So I'll say, well, you know what? Topa doesn't put anything on the school calendar. So you might find a lot of stuff from Nordoff or from Nearmani, but you won't find, so each site is sort of I don't know who, how you require that, but it's not, I have to rely on Kathy and she,
And I have to go look at every school to bring it over to the district.
It's just,
If it's not there, it doesn't.
We've talked about that too. It's like that, to me, that was one of the great functionalities that we wanted in our website. When I first got on the board, I was like, gosh, we need to provide
and
such so
Catherine White
easy.
is great about, all her stuff is up there. It's on Facebook. It's up to, it's like, I'd love to see that. And you can't require people, but I don't know if there's some.
It really comes down to designating a person to do it, because when I was there, I was the one that did it. So now that Dawn is there, if she's not used to being the one that does it, because maybe somebody else does it at Miners Oaks on her staff, then it's a matter of really getting somebody to take ownership for it. And that's...
And it is, this is, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but so I went to a Miramani open house and I talked to the 6th grade teacher. I don't know specifically it was 6th grade, but I'm just making a story. And I wanted to write her a thank you email and I couldn't remember her name, so I went on there and it doesn't tell you it's 6th grade, it just says room 22 or room 20, so it's like, I couldn't find who the 6th grade, and then there was another time when I wanted to send somebody I knew an email and I didn't know her first name. I always knew her as Mrs. whatever. So, and there's no, you go on there, so you can't, there's no contact. You can't hit the classroom and get her email number. So I was like, what if I was a parent and wanted to send my teacher and I didn't know my child's teacher's first name? I have no way of sending her an email. So it just seems inconsistent.
I've thought it would be great, because we have so many people in the community that do websites and stuff. It would be just great to do like a single, kind of day where you have a bunch of people in a, focus group, right? And you just kind of go through it and and have people there just able to do the stuff, because it's like there's a hackathon, because there's so many unintuitive aspects of it. When you're looking for something, you're just like, why would this only be under, it's like under parents or, where you're just trying to find, it should say directory. And then you go there and there, but it's like, it just doesn't make, there are parts of it that aren't intuitive. It needs constant update.
And it says that we're going to provide staff development opportunities for website.
Would it be terrible to let Dawn know, as principal of her school, that she needs to find a way, one way or the other, to make sure that the stuff gets to the...
No. I might have looked in October and she started doing it, because she was a new teacher, so.
We'll just check to see who's doing it.
David has trained each office manager, particularly on the calendar. So
they lost Katie, as you know.
But she and I were the ones doing it actively. So now it's just a matter, I'm sure, of transitioning that.
Well, somebody did go in and put Dawn as the principal, so she's there. So it doesn't.
I think David Rogers might have done that.
But you could see that the rest hadn't been.
Yeah.
If we're not following our matrix very well, then I will check on that. Hello, Kathy, did you say that
we're meeting on the 16th.
Oh, okay.
Of July?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Page 40.
Quick note, I don't know if that link was ever fixed. I'm looking at page 35 on the school accountability report card.
Catherine, remember I showed that one to you?
About the dashboard?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It was fixed that day we discovered it.
Okay.
Did you check it since? Was there still an issue?
No, I checked it and you said it was working, and then I checked it and it still wasn't working, so I told you that, and then I haven't checked it since.
Okay. We did fix it that day.
Okay. Great.
This isn't a discussion, but just the first column, paragraph that says new.
I'm sorry, what page are we on?
40.
Okay.
It says proceeds from the sale or lease of property can only be used for one-time expenditures, not for salaries or general operating expenses. So just with the summit discussion, that we just need to make sure that money goes into one-time expenditures, not to pay the salary for the janitor.
Well, so lease with an option to purchase. So so just as with this property, if we enter into a long-term lease for a property, that can go straight into general fund, general operating budget. But if it's a sale or a disguised sale, then the proceeds are going to be going into the capital facilities, capital improvements.
So is this the return of the old law? Remember?
Right, it sunsetted like 2
because
years
there was
ago.
this is really just the return of the historical
That's right.
law. There had been that brief period when you could do something surplus and just keep it for operating, but
That's exactly
that
right.
ended.
Yep, that's right.
$68?
I was looking
Good
at
choice.
46.
Yes, 46.
But I don't really have a specific question. It's about criminal background checks for contractors, and I just wondered if we are meeting those requirements as we go forward with the library.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
64, is that what you said?
68?
68.
I'm wondering, because it says new policy, optional, it seems to me like this is SARB. Don't we already have that? Because it's just mentioning SARB. We already have SARB, so how is this new?
I don't know what's new about it. SARB is definitely not new.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, well, what? Oh.
And it's all optional. I mean, that was my comment.
Yeah, so
Why
I
do
just
we
thought,
need this policy?
this says new, so I guess we haven't had that, but we have it. We just haven't had the policy. And then
Do
I
we
was
want the policy?
wondering if Janine is a member of our SARB.
I'm the key SARB person.
Okay.
Do you like this
Because the board
policy?
shall appoint members to the district who may.
You know, I'd have to read it more closely and spend some time with it, but from a general viewpoint, I think that, I mean, I don't know if there was any, what the old language, if there was any looked like, but it seems like everything we're doing.
Okay. I just, when it's optional, unless we want to do it, I would rather not do it. But if we want to do it, then it's fine.
I think it's important because it's about addressing discipline problems and absenteeism. I've got that letter that, remember 2 years ago, Kevin, that letter to that family that.
Right, yeah.
But I was just wondering if, just may include parents as representative, but doesn't have to.
I mean, effectively, this is just, according to the note, this is just formalizing what we're already doing. It says it's for districts like us that have their own SARB. I guess the alternative to our own SARB would be that we could use the County Office of Education SARB. I'm reading in that top square there next to the note. Anyway.
Okay. So we should have it, even though it says optional, I think.
Because we're doing it.
We're definitely doing it.
And then just a note on 70, the SARB will collect data and annually report that data to the board.
We definitely have to report the data to the county, and so we do have information on that we could certainly bring to the board.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. I was just looking at that data today. We sent out almost double the letters this year than in previous years, so we were excited about that because we were very consistent and on topic this year.
Good.
I have 75.
I have 75 too. I'll let you go first. Do we
I
have
just-
the same 75?
At the bottom, the policy that will, this is part of our school district of choice, and it just seems bizarre that the policy is that we'll establish the number of students who will be accepted into the district through the program. I guess it reminds me as a lawyer, Michael, of Doe defendants or something, like 1 through 1,000. Make sure it's more than you're going to take. But I mean, is that kind of it? I mean, it just seems like, why wouldn't we just be unlimited?
Well, because there are many other districts that don't have quite the same available capacity that we do. But
So
yeah,
in
for
our
us-
case,
So I
we'll
just changed it to may instead of shall. We
Oh.
can if we want.
Yeah, I like the may. Yeah, I like the may because currently we don't have a
It's
limit.
not an
But
issue,
in the
but
future,
if
if we ever get there, then we might. Sure.
So who makes that note? Kathy makes that note?
Yeah, Kathy does.
In which one are we talking?
Page 75, the last paragraph, is that the board may by resolution.
I'll always vote for me over shall. 88. So this is because of personal experience, but withholding grades, diplomas, or transcripts, And for books that aren't returned, so I had two questions about this. The first is, I wasn't sure exactly how this squared with the concept of not charging for education. So that was my first concern. And then my second concern was, if we do this, I would like an annual report of who we're withholding diplomas from. Because one of our kids had their diploma withheld because the school said that they had kept a book. And our kid he never even read the book. So he never took the book.
That's why he kept it. He didn't
And so we had to go digging through the classroom and the library, and we found the book was there. And we cared because we didn't want to pay, $200 for a book. But I'm wondering if there are students who just don't care that much and just say, okay, fine, keep my diploma.
Well, I'll tell you, this is something that we certainly have been looking at this year with our student fee conversations. I understand the need for us to try to have a stick when carrots don't work for trying to recoup our cost for lost books or other issues. But I feel strongly that it is inappropriate for us to be, especially transcripts. I feel strongly about diplomas too, but transcripts, a kid who's coming back, we have in the past denied someone 5 years after the fact who graduated coming back to get a copy of their transcript, the ability to get one because they still had some outstanding debt owed to us. And I found that horrific. I think that if someone's asking for a transcript, they're doing it because they want to get a job or they're trying to apply to a school. And either one of those we should be encouraging and helping facilitate.
Now the graffiti part, that kind of irritates me. So I don't mind that as much, but there should be, there should be a way to get out of it.
Well, exactly. Well, there's also the due process part of all this. It's crazy when you talk about a Kafkaesque situation when you're encountering a school district that just says you did something and you think you didn't do it, and it's like, where's the due process? What do you do about that if you disagree? You have to pay it to get your transcript.
Well, it talks about the due process would be the same as for expulsion, right? Which has an appeal process, right?
So again, I don't believe that this is going to be a very frequent thing going forward.
It also says may, right? It doesn't say shall be required to pay. So,
exactly
right. You have the discretion as to whether or not to exercise this.
That's exactly right. That's why I think it's going to be less frequent.
Yeah.
Good, and I just don't know how often it happens. I know it happened to us, so I don't know how often. So that's kind of why I'd like to know. I mean, is it 2 kids a year?
You were the only ones in the last decade.
Often when you go to a school and you raise an issue, you are the only one that's ever raised that issue, right?
I'll tell you, it's a really complicated. To answer the question, or to tell me what it would be to give them the same due process as for an expelled student. That implies, just to be reasonable about it, that the student who is being charged with the book, for example, would have to formally appeal that decision. But it doesn't necessarily mean that. It could mean that in the first instance, to withhold the transcript, you would have to go through that due process for, we would have to have a closed session to determine that so-and-so can't get their transcript because, that would be crazy.
Let the record reflect there's a nod.
Unless it was because of graffiti.
So anyway, the May fixes that.
So page 90, the alcohol and drug policies. So this was before I knew that 67% of our high school students are. So the last sentence in the first paragraph, the superintendent or designee shall develop comprehensive programs and activities. Do we want that to say shall or may? Or do we already do it, so it's not? Have we developed comprehensive drug programs?
Drug programs, no. I would say I don't think so.
Foster safe, healthy, and drug-free environments. Never mind. Okay.
I would say that we do that through proactive strategies to include kids in clubs and activities, and we certainly have a policy that you will lose out on those things if you engage in drug use. So I think we set up an environment that strongly discourages it.
So there is on the next page, right under instruction, It says the district shall provide science-based preventative instruction, which I know happens at
Isn't
Matilla.
it done in the health class
In the
at
PE class.
Nordoff
Oh,
there?
Nordoff.
The
Yeah, it's done, I
health
believe, at
class
both.
for freshmen.
Yep.
And this whole thing that says new, I don't know. I don't think it's really new for us. I mean, it sounds like you're right, the district, I mean, all this stuff, it's sort of like, well, Janine kind of do this, I don't know. That's why sometimes, how is this new?
I did notice earlier, and we skipped over it because the school can administer prescription drugs except for cannabis. And then after the 77% or 97%, I was saying, well, we don't need the policy if everybody is
already doing
They found their own supplier.
which is terrible.
This is kind of a silly question, but 93, the first paragraph, any student found to be selling a controlled substance shall be expelled. Is that true? We just expel them? They don't.
That is a must by Ed Code.
Do we actively try to find drug dealers? I mean, it couldn't be that hard if we tried.
I know people used to tell me that people would hide their stuff right at the corner of the bushes, right out by the farmer.
But if every student knows where to go to get the drugs, then how hard would it be to?
I can tell you that we actively investigate every single bit of information that we get.
So maybe have an adult stand at the corner by the state, is it farmers or state?
State Farm, Bob.
Yeah.
What's odd about this policy to me is that it doesn't specify on school grounds. I mean, so are we, because we had that old conversation about that, another situation involving some students and potential illegal activity, and the answer was, oh, it didn't happen at school, so we have nothing to do with it. But is this suggesting that if someone, no, this is only on school grounds?
Or again, connected to a school activity coming to or from school, or a school extracurricular.
Right, even though that doesn't say it in the policy, that's just a function of the law.
That's correct.
But if they're buying drugs on the way home or on their way to school,
That's under us.
That's like the feds back in the old days bringing in the interstate commerce to take care of certain state discrimination.
Well, I had a question on 104, but I can't remember now.
I have one on 111.
Let me just think, parent involvement. Number 5 on 104. Use the findings of the evaluation conducted pursuant to item number 4 above to design evidence-based strategies for more effective parent guardian family involvement. So, and number 4, of course, is like conduct meaningful involvement. So never mind, we do this through our okay.
So the 111 question was on the minimum hours. And, I mean, I don't really want to be talking about minimum hours. I'd rather talk about maximum hours.
What paragraph?
In the description, the first box, it talks about kindergarten, maybe no less than 60 minutes. And then in the policy, in the last paragraph on the page, it says at least 3 hours. So it looks to me like there's an inconsistency in the instruction versus the policy. I just wondered why we have the policy.
I'm sorry, tell me.
So
where you
if you look
see
in the first
inconsistency?
box, at the bottom of the second paragraph where it says, provide that no single school day may be less than 60 minutes for kindergarten. And then if you look in the last paragraph on the page, except as otherwise permitted by law, the average school day established for kindergarten and TK students will be at least 3 hours.
So the difference is average versus a single day.
Okay.
So we do have the ability to have minimum days that might go below the required average number of minutes they have to receive, but in order to meet the state requirements for ADA over a 10-day period as well as over the course of the entire year, we have to meet those averages.
Okay.
So how is it that no longer than 4 hours? Our kindergartners are more than 4 hours.
Excluding recess.
There's an extended day
Yeah.
opportunity, which
Yeah,
is
I
what
think
we
that's how
do,
we do.
for our kindergarten. I don't know if that's.
I mean, it's, you come at 8:15 and you leave at 1:45.
Yeah, we do extended day kindergarten. We don't do the regular kindergarten, so we go beyond.
So parents don't have a choice of a morning kindergarten only.
Right.
But should this policy reflect that then?
Well, it's saying except as otherwise permitted by law, and what we're doing is the full day.
Permitted by law.
Exactly.
I like the idea of morning kindergarten and afternoon kindergarten.
I mean,
I think it's too long of a day.
I don't know.
They did that briefly at Topa.
I don't know either, I just have.
I think they did late start.
Some of
They
this,
started
you know, when
since
you
I've been there.
They had,
Doesn't
everyone
really
was
apply
there
to
from
us.
10 something to
Oh, right,
20
they overlapped to the middle, right.
John Walker would cry to sleep if I didn't adopt him. Hey, Andy, it's John. Just wanted to find out they adopt them all.
And then, I mean, on page 121, it says the same thing again, the middle paragraph. The board shall establish the length of the school day in the district's TK program. TK programs will be maintained for different lengths of time, either at the same or different school sites, as long as the school day is at least 3 hours, but no more than 4.
TK. So
Yeah.
TK, that's
We stick to that.
yeah. TK, the kids have an early exit, so yeah, it's like a.
I had 117.
117?
Yeah, the first paragraph there. No field trip shall be authorized if any student would be excluded from, this goes to the cost.
Yeah.
Lack of funds. The superintendent or designee shall coordinate with community groups to supply funds for students in need. I'm not sure how the fundraising specifically for students in need conforms with the requirement of paying for everyone.
So field trips are one exception that we're allowed to, where we are able to charge fees if it's for the direct cost of the transportation on a field trip. So we are able to charge fees, but what they're saying here is that they don't,
We can raise funds.
Exactly. Right. So whereas many other things, you can't get yourself out of an illegal charging of fees simply by allowing a waiver or having people self-identify as having need, and then you find a way to help them their need. You only can do that if it's actually a legitimate charge in the first place. So again, the field trip you could potentially have the charge, whereas something else you couldn't.
Interesting.
So if there's not money for it, then the kid just stays in school. Nobody.
No, that's what we're saying, is that if a student doesn't have the money, then it's the district's responsibility to find a way to get them there.
Oh, okay, but what this is saying is by finding a way, we can go out and solicit funds for that.
It's hard. That's really hard to comply with, because you authorize it and then you hope that you get the critical mass necessary to do it. Yeah, maybe what if you had a whole bunch of kids that couldn't afford it, and now you've got to either cancel the trip or find a way to pay for them.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And I am just wondering what the definition of a field trip is. I read what this says, but this doesn't really define it very particularly. A bunch of kids from high school just went to Iceland. Is that a field trip? That would have been
or Hawaii.
That's thousands of dollars per kid.
So Iceland was actually done, although of course there's a very close relationship. It was not considered an actual school activity. It's not something that we actually put on. The band does start.
And how do we distinguish that? How does it become something we put on versus that we don't put on?
Does it have to do with being in a specific class?
Well, in this case, right, it's World Strides, the one that.
Which is the organization that does the DC trips and the DNR. They're separate from the district.
But I would say that's a travel agency. It doesn't make the big difference to me in terms of that doesn't establish that it's not a school event.
Well, don't get me wrong. I suppose you're right. If you're saying a school event in the sense that going back to discipline and those sorts of things, I think that we would still have jurisdiction with Natalie Hay and Naima Houston as supervisors and this going through the school. But certainly for purposes of the definition of a field trip, I know that is not a field trip. we'll get you a very clear.
Yeah, I
It's a
think
good
that would be
question,
helpful.
because if somebody outside of the district wanted to go
Yeah.
on that Iceland field trip, they couldn't go. You have to be a student in the district to go on
Right.
that trip.
And some kid could have said, "I really want to go to."
Oh, and
No,
go on
but
that
can't
trip.
afford
If it was a travel agent, you could join a group going.
Yeah, let's get that definition clarified.
You got.
Page 122. The second regular paragraph says new. A credentialed teacher who is first assigned to TK after July 1st, 2015 shall, by August 1, 2020, have at least 24 units in early childhood education.
That's something that we've been aware of and complying with.
Okay.
I don't know if I can keep up with you. I had a lot of questions because I knew you were going to have them.
I have a question on 131 about transportation for foster youth. And the way I read this last paragraph, the new paragraph, is that we may get a foster student, let's say from Ventura, who everyone deems best interest to stay in the school in Ventura. So Ventura gets the ADA, but we're required to pay for transportation down there? Is that what this says?
What specific part are you looking at?
The last paragraph, superintendent or designee shall collaborate with local child welfare agency to determine how transportation will be provided, arranged, and funded in a cost-effective manner to enable foster youth to remain in their school of origin for the duration of their time in foster care when it is in the best interest to do so. Such transportation costs may be paid by either the child welfare agency or district or shared by both. So it's just saying we're allowed to, we don't have to.
Let me look into this one.
That's a good pull. That's a tough
Yeah,
one.
I read it similarly, but I'm not.
Well, no, I mean, my question, or what I need to get clarification on is I do remember when this is a recent legislative change as well, supporting foster youth. But your scenario was saying if it was a foster youth who was in Ventura schools and was placed up here, and Ventura schools were getting the ADA, I believe Ventura schools are the ones that have the obligation for transportation, not
So that is
OUSD.
kind of my question. Is it the district of origin or the district?
The district that the student's a part of. It's nothing to do with where they're placed, it's where they're part of.
That wasn't
So-
how I read it.
so the
It
burden-
just says the district. It doesn't say which district. I didn't know if it was
Right.
the one he's
Yeah, what
going
if
to
they-
or
what
ours.
if,
I'll confirm that, but that's my recollection of the review of this change.
I think that was my last one.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on. I think were we at superintendent's report?
Addendum to the employment agreement?
Yeah, that's where we are
yeah.
first.
Sorry, I almost skipped that.
I'll move to approve. Do we need to discuss it?
I'll second.
Yeah, I think.
Because I want to say, I believe you're doing a fabulous job, and I'm very happy with our hire.
Thank you.
I echo that. That we all, I think, feel that way, and we're happy to vote on this contract extension.
Easy vote.
And so, who would like to make the motion?
I'll move to approve.
Oh, all those in favor? Aye. 5-0.
5-0. Thank you all.
Now, superintendent's report.
Well, I was considering being nostalgic looking back, as this is the final meeting of our first school year with this team. But I'll hold off on those comments until August 14th, where that will actually be my 1 year anniversary of stepping into the role, as well as an opportunity for us to talk about our plans for this upcoming year. So with that, I've enjoyed this year.
Any board members have any future agenda items?
I do for the crowd. No, I just wanted to say that I was struck this year. I went to 3 elementary promotions, the Matilah promotion and Nordoff. And every single school, and Chaparral, every single school, students got up and talked about how much they loved their school. There was a kid, either a 5th grader or a 6th grader at all 3 schools I went to, who had been a new student, who said, I was so welcome here. I wasn't bullied. So, and I was at San Antonio and Summit and looking at the beautiful, I was just like, wow, we have a great district, and our kids, we really do serve our kids well, and certainly in the health and safety and welfare, and there is an attachment. I mean, I know we've talked about there's a lot of things we want to improve, but those moments were, for me, really special and reminded me of, wow, got to do the salute to the flag 5 times in one day, and it just really was like, it was just powerful.
Absolutely.
Well said.
I concur.
And thank God you stand next to me, because it's so easy to remember the flag salute with Nane's strong voice.
Remember when I went to Amen at the end of this?
I do. Because I always am tempted to.
It's like, wow, this is weird. Sorry, Shelley, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one. On that great note, I hate to bring up another issue, but I would really like to figure out how best to go about discussing the dress code issue. I'd love to see it happen before school starts. I don't know if that's plausible. I don't know if if it has to be a whole team, like looking at the late start committee, or if it's something that can just be done at the board level, but I would love to move on that.
So
Isn't it kind of different at each site?
Yeah, I was going to say.
It is. There's an
Somewhat.
overall policy for the district, and then each site has a district or a policy.
I'm wondering if we could get a copy of the policies.
Kathy sent it to us.
Yeah, she
Oh,
sent it
did
to
you?
us, yeah.
We can read that.
I'm wondering if I could read that policy.
Shelley, do you think are you thinking more specifically about the high school or the
And the junior high.
Junior high, yeah, but not elementary school. I don't think it really comes up.
I haven't seen it being
Yeah.
a problem at the elementary school, but looking at the language,
Yeah.
I find it needs some work.
So,
I haven't gone through each school, to be honest. But I have gone through the high school and junior high, and a lot of the language has a lot of sexist connotation to it. And I know it's an issue for students, and I think it's unfairly used in the schools. I think that work needs to be done on it.
So do you think the approach would be for us to have a meeting like September? I mean, I think August would be difficult,
Right.
but where we would first share our thoughts about the written policies, and then do you think at that same meeting, I think it's obvious to me that we should have leadership at those schools speak, because they're going to certainly feel like they have thoughts about it, and I don't think it's something we should do abstractly and just say,
Right.
So then the question
And our
is,
school advisory board, our
Right.
student advisory board.
Yeah.
that's right.
But I think going through the
Yeah.
language like we do on board policies would be useful. I think the input.
Do you think we should do that first and then have the public comment and the comment from the leadership, or do you think we should do it all at the same time?
Well, I would not want to comment on the language until I'd heard from the administrators. But I do think the way we kind of read through them and take notes, and then I'd like to listen to the people and then have a discussion.
Yeah, it's not like tons. I mean, we've just gone through 200 and something pages. So, yeah, we could. So why don't we put it on the September calendar?
And I think what
And
I
do
may
it all at
do
once.
is I'll email it to Kathy so she can disseminate it. But there are example policies that other districts have used that are far more equitable, that we can, kind of side by side ours with theirs and see if that helps us to understand some of the issues or not. So I'll send those to you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That'll be on the parking lot for a very short period of time.
I don't like to park too long.
Anyone else? Consent calendar.
I'll move to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
opposed? I don't usually do that, but anyway, 5-0. This meeting is adjourned.